All right, everybody, we are live on YouTube.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see everybody here. Hope everybody's healthy. So I'm going to call the advisory committee meeting to order at 7:33 on January the 12th, 2022. Okay, so we're going to have a pretty light meeting tonight. We're going to hear from the library shortly when they get here. They're going to get here around 8, we think. Ryan Donovan, the library director, had a meeting with the Friends group that supports the library first. So he's coming over as soon as he gets through with that. So I think that's going to be about 8. Unfortunately, Pam, who runs the senior center, has been very sick and in the hospital. So they could not come tonight. So we're going to reschedule them for the 26th. Marcy, can you talk to her and see if the 26th will work with she and the Council on Aging?
Yes, we'll get that confirmed, Kathy. Thank you.
We had that one open, so that's why it slots in there pretty nicely. Okay, so let's start out with, we've only got one set of minutes to approve, which is the ones from last week's meeting, the long meeting with DPW and Youth and Family Services. So I don't think Claire's here yet, but that's okay. All right. Is she here?
She's an attendee. I keep trying to bring her over and she's not coming over for whatever reason. Try again. I tried like 10 times.
She can hear us, so she's fine.
There she goes.
Okay. All right. Hey, Claire. Hello. Okay, so starting top left, as far as any amendments, changes to the minutes, Eric?
No, I don't have any.
Tim?
No changes.
AP?
Nope, nothing for me.
Marcy?
I just had one minor little thing on line 45. I think Friends group is maybe one word there and it should be 2. That's the only change I had.
Yeah, mine is 2 words.
It may just be the way the formatting is showing on my screen, so that makes sense, Kathy.
Yeah, I printed it, so I think it's fine. Okay, anything else,
Okay,
Marcy?
thank you.
That's
Nope.
it? Okay,
That's
Tom?
it.
No, nothing for me.
Adam?
Looks good to me too.
Claire, you did a great job on these minutes. The only change I've got is line 51. The SAP increase is 3%, not 2%.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody agree with that? They used 2.8 to begin with at the starting, and then SAP voted to use 3%. So it's 3. Okay, so I don't want to change anything as far as the DPW piece of this. I'm just not there yet as far as truly having my arms around all their numbers, but I do have one question for the group, because we've got some time to talk about this. Do you believe that the $2.496 million that Karen says needs to be spent to finish the downtown project and all the ancillary work around that? It's my understanding that that doesn't include what she's already spent on the, just call it the St. Mark's Park, that she's already spent money there on grading, et cetera, because she had to, or that $290,000 grant would have expired.
That's included in the 2.496.
You think it is? So you think that 2.496 includes money that has been spent already?
Yeah, if you look at the minutes, there's the chart, right? 2.496 consists of the 290, the 1.2, the 434, the 209, and 361.
I agree that's what it says, but do you believe that's correct? That's what I'm asking. Because that's not what I heard her say. And I know that's what this says. So I'll get that clarified, because I still am not clear that the 290 is part of the 2496. I thought she said that that's what's to be spent to finish the town portion of the road and to do the Newton Street sidewalks, to do the sidewalks going north from the library, do the sidewalks going south down toward the cemetery.
I think all along the 290 was never going to cover everything that was needed to be done that we had envisioned as part of that grant.
I agree with that too.
Right.
I agree
So
with that too.
the 290 is just the grant money. And then the rest is money that goes against that big pool of work to be done.
Okay. All right. I am going to talk to her and make sure I get this piece. I want to see this on a spreadsheet that really ties this out. Okay. Now, next question is, she's talking about sidewalks that are going to go down. She says Woodward and the cemetery, right? Cemetery is on the west side of the road. Woodward's on the east side of the road. Which side of the road is the sidewalk going to be on?
I don't know.
Does anybody know? Tim, you know?
I think, well, the way it's set up now is there's a sidewalk on both sides of the road. As you're heading south from Route 30, there's a sidewalk on both sides till you get to Woodward, and then
Yep.
only on the westbound side, because that softball field, those fields come out. So that sidewalk, when you get to about across the street from the entrance to Woodward, it sort of ceases. You can tell there was a sidewalk there, kind of ceases to exist. And from what I've just been told by word of mouth, that's going to continue till you reach the cemetery directly across the street from the entrance to the new Public Works building there.
Okay, so she's just referring to the cemetery as a marker as to where it ends on the other side of the road.
I would say so. And the sidewalk, well, the sidewalk on the eastbound side from Route 30 to Woodward, that's been redone. Like, I can't imagine, that's the new part there. So unless they're talking about building a continuation from Woodward to the DPW, but there's not a lot of land there, because that wall, like those fields and that, there's like a stone wall that comes out there. So that I would think it's just on the westbound side, but that's just me speculating on what's there currently.
So Tom, you don't mean DPW, you meant public safety?
Public safety, right? Yeah.
And the reason I'm bringing up Tim and Andrew, AP will remember that Tim Litt, who is a gentleman who follows town meetings very, very closely. We haven't seen him in a while, but he came to the public, safety building committee, the building committee. He would come to those meetings and he really pushed to have that sidewalk extended all the way down so people could walk all the way down it and up the driveway to public safety. So that's why I'm trying to figure out this is what this is going to do. And maybe it is. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the sidewalk does go all the way to the cemetery and public safety building. It goes all the way to
the other side, on the west side.
On the other side, correct.
Yeah.
There's just no crosswalk to, actually, no, there is. No, there isn't. There isn't a crosswalk there. So there's just no crosswalk to go across, and then there is no sidewalk to get up to the public safety building.
And he was trying to get that sidewalk on the east side to go all the way down right to the public safety drive. So, okay, enough of that. It is what it is. Okay, so cheers report. So no new news as far as the new date for the annual town meeting right now. They're still looking at April 30th or May 7th. So there's no new news there. We talked last week about possibly trying to change advisory bylaw to allow advisory members to sit on what probably will be a permanent capital investment planning committee. That's the warrant article that they have on board to do that, to make it a permanent committee. And without the advisory bylaw being changed, we can't sit on the committee because we can't sit on a permanent committee unless it's been appointed by the town moderator. So you may remember last week we discussed whether the bylaw would allow a moderator appointed member on that standing committee. And we weren't sure. So we've checked with town council and he says, no, it's got to be a committee fully appointed by the moderator for that to be part of the current bylaw. So if we did want to have an advisory member on the committee, we'd have to change our bylaw and we'd have to get the, we'd have to ask the Board of Selectmen to change the language in their proposed article to make it a standing committee, and or if they wouldn't, go to town meeting and ask for an amendment. So my suggestion is that we do not do that this year. First of all, the warrant's closed. We'd have to ask the Board of Selectmen to reopen the warrant to put the advisory bylaw change on there. So it's quite a bit of lifting to get this done, and I'm not sure it's worth it for this year, but that's one person's opinion. So AP, you want to weigh in here as far as what you want to do?
Yeah, and I think that makes sense.
I mean, we need to think about it next year, right? But I just think it's probably too late this year, and have to be a lot of moving parts to fall in place to this. And what I would hate to see happen is the warrant article to make that committee a standing committee and give them the oversight they're asking for as far as approved projects. I'd hate to see it get voted down because of tinkering with advisory again, trying to be on it. Tim? Because if Tim's nodding yes, I think he's okay with it.
Yeah.
Anybody want to fight for this, or is everybody okay with just punting on this for at least this year and bringing it back another year if we think it's appropriate?
Yeah,
We
that
still
sounds
have a
good.
liaison to that committee. I mean, we can point liaisons all day long, but we just won't have a member of the committee that would vote on anything. Which means you
I
would
like
do
that
your
idea.
oversight. You do your oversight on advisory. Okay. All right, so it looks like we've got agreement with that. So I'm not going to bother doing this in motion. I think we've all agreed. So just make sure it's in the minutes clear that we have agreed to postpone any consideration of changing the advisory bylaw to allow someone to sit on the capital investment planning committee, if it were to become a permanent committee.
Hey
Okay.
Kathy, has there ever been discussion historically on advisory about having a member sit on the, I forget the name of it, the finance policy committee?
I'm not sure what committee you're talking about, but let me guess. So the town, Brian Ballantyne, Mark Purple, Carla, the town accountant, and the assessor call themselves the town finance committee. So if that's who you're referring to.
Probably.
Okay, then separately, so there's one that you could be referring to. Separately, there is an informal group that meets, I don't call it 4 times. We're meeting tomorrow morning at 7:30. That includes the superintendent, the school committee chair, the vice chair, the select board chair, capital planning chair, Brian Ballantyne, Mark Purple, and Carla. So that's just an informal group that gets together to kind of talk about where we think the budget's going and if there's anything anybody wants to bring up. So, but it's informal. It's not an official committee. It's just literally a group of people that get together to talk, and that occupy certain roles. So there's that one too. So
That
I
one-
go to that one.
Okay, that's probably the one that matters then.
Okay, we're going to hear from next week. We're going to hear from the town finance committee. Town finance, do they call them a committee? What are they? Town finance group, I guess. Anyway, they're going to be here next week, all of them. So we'll have a chance to talk to them all in one time like we did last year, which I think is helpful because they're so interrelated. So I think we're okay, Tim, as far as being represented in that bigger group that meets just to kind of throw things around.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. All righty. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so now next Thursday at 7:30 is a very important meeting of the Capital Investment Planning Committee, the ad hoc committee. They are going to have they've hired a space planner for Woodward in case Woodward were to become a town building and not a school, to basically take a look at it and recommend how that could happen with the understanding of our town. So he's gone around departments, he's asked them what they need, and he is going to basically present his recommendations next Thursday at 7:30. So I'm going to post a meeting so that if we end up with a quorum, we'll be fine. And that way, you can ask questions, whatever, we can even discuss things. It's probably going to be a fairly well-attended meeting, I would think so, because there's a whole lot of stakeholders in what might happen to Woodward if it were to become a town building and not a school. So next Thursday at 7:30, and that's the only thing that's on the agenda is that report. So that's the purpose of the meeting. Okay. All right. I haven't seen the report, so I don't know what it says, but it should be interesting. Further update. So the Capital Planning Committee - School Research Subcommittee that I'm on with Jason Melanowski and Katura Martin from the school committee, we are going to present our report to the school committee probably the first meeting they have in February, which I believe is the second Wednesday. So I'll make sure you guys know, because you probably want to tune into that one too. I'll make sure you get the report for sure. But we are about to write our report. My part in this report is to report on the pros and cons of using MSBA money to finance a piece of a school building. So Southborough gets 37%, or at least they did last time we did a building, on certain cost, not the whole thing. So we will not get an overall 37% reimbursement, but still quite a bit of money. So effectively, we may get something like 18, 19, 20%, again, depending on what the costs are. We expect the cost of a new rehabbed Neary, whether it's rehabbed completely or torn down and built again, to be the biggest building project Southborough's ever seen, much bigger than public safety, much bigger than our share of Algonquin. So it would be a big deal to get this approved. So we intend to make our recommendation to school committee. They then will take it from there as far as they will vote whether they want to go forward. If they want to go forward, then there is a placeholder on the spring town warrant to basically get money to go to the next phase, which is the feasibility study. In the meantime, MSBA is expected to meet in March and let us know whether we're going to be invited into their program for Neary. There's 11 schools that are the finalists, and we're one of the 11. And so we will hear from MSBA before town meeting, which is one of the reasons that it's a good thing this is being pushed back. So we do have a chance to get the money that's needed for the next phase on the warrant. There's a placeholder for it, so you just have to get the money in there. So that's kind of where that stands. But things may start moving pretty fast at this point, as far as bringing this to the point that if it gets past school committee, then bring it to the town. So we'll see, but it really will be a major, major, major project. The good news is, I think that the cost of, so that's going to be a very costly project, no doubt about it, any way you do it. I've seen really rough numbers as far as a rehab cost, and then doing it from scratch, and they're not much different. So, saving the building may not really be worthwhile when you think of all the things you may run into that you didn't expect. But building costs right now, believe it or not, Massachusetts for schools are $750 a square foot. So do the math, multiply times 60,000 square feet, and it's a really big, big number. So we'll see what we come out with. So far, I don't have a good reason not to use MSBA funding, other than it will probably delay the project for up to 2 years. So we're talking about a building that wouldn't come online to maybe 2028, even if we went as fast as we could starting today. So Tim, I'm making sure you know this because of the work you're doing elsewhere. But even if we got approval in March, and we got right off to, started right away, it's still, we're talking about a project that's way down the road, which could be a problem because Neary needs some work pretty soon. It needs a new roof, needs electrical work, needs a new parking lot. So it needs things. Senior Center has been very patient about waiting to see how this turns out, to see how they fit into this. They may not want to wait till 2028 before they have significantly better space as far as where they are. So it's going to be a complicated process no matter what. So any questions about that? Okay, so Eric, can you watch for Ryan Donovan to appear as an attendee? He thinks he's going to be here about 8.
Great.
Okay.
I am zoomed in on attendees.
There's at least 3 library board trustees that are coming. Janet Maney, Amy Yazdani, and Marguerite Landry are the ones I've told, so we'll watch for those 2. Okay, so I thought we'd go ahead and talk about schedule while we're waiting for them to get here. Okay, so we're still on schedule for meeting every Wednesday through at least the first Wednesday in February. But what I've done is changed around a couple of the departments because of council and agents. So I put them on the 26th, Marcy. So if you could talk to Pam and the COA guys about that, that would be great. And then I put Karen's water back on for the 26th so we can actually spend some time truly focused on water. We've never done, at least advisory's never done a real thorough job with water. And not for a good reason. They were, it doesn't affect the tax rate, right? We basically say the, people who use water are going to pay for it. But you've got to care about that too. If we care about keeping taxes in control, we should care about keeping the water bills under control too. So we should do a better job with that, especially now that it's its own enterprise fund. So we'll do that on the 26th too. So that'll fill the slots for the 26th. And next week is really important. So it's going to be Mr. Martell's night, initially with IT and MPC, assuming they can come. And do you know, Tim, whether that's going to work? So can you find out fairly quickly, especially with MPC?
Yep.
I'm hoping, the whole group can come, especially Angela and the chair. Okay. And then we'll talk to the triumvirate of treasurer, accounting, and assessor in BOS all at one time. So Tom, I know you're the liaison. You're not going to have to do a lot of work with those budgets. They are what they are. There's not much change from last year. They're not trying to add people. They've got a good handle on the budget. So you should meet with them or talk to them, do a Zoom or something with them and just go over it. But those budgets are pretty cut and dry. The main reason we want to meet with the assessor is to discuss where we're going to end up with as far as what we're going to rely on for split between residential values and commercial values. So we'll have our spreadsheet that will show him before then, that will show him what we think is going to happen, depending on where he comes out. But he's going to have to start giving us some idea of what he thinks we should use. So we'll see. And we'll see where he's going to go from there too, because we've got to get that straight at some point, because that drives this whole budget. Some of the departments are coming in pretty good. We've actually got a lower year-over-year increase than we normally do at this time. So that part's good, but it's going to all be thrown out the window if we have this big residential increase. And right now, last time Andrew looked at it last week, it was, I think, 14% in Southborough year over year. So that's going to make a significant difference to what the houses pay. So the overall budget may be okay.
I think Tom has a question.
Yeah. So two things, Kathy. One was on those teams. That's where I sent that email on Monday about finding out who the actual people are, like who the department heads are for those things. I didn't see anything in that spreadsheet that listed the actual department heads. But then also, I'm not going to be able to be at the meeting next Wednesday, so I didn't know if that made a difference or not. If it doesn't make a difference, I'll just let them know.
Not to say that you're not needed. This is the one set of departments I'm not too worried about with the
Sounds good. I'm not offended.
Because they're the one, they're working on this budget as hard as we are, right? And so the interesting part of those is going to be what Paul Sabelli says as far as what he thinks that the 1/1/22 valuations look like. And that has nothing to do with being a liaison. So that's fine.
But Kathy, to Tom's question, assessors, Paul Sabelli.
Yep.
Treasurer is Brian Ballantyne. I think select board would be Mark, right?
Yeah.
Or Vanessa.
And then talk to Carla too. Carla McAuliffe is the town accountant. So that's a separate department. It's basically her and her assistant. So there's just not much in those budgets besides the salaries.
Okay.
So that meeting is for next week. That's next Wednesday.
Yes. Okay. So is anyone else not planning on being here next Wednesday? Because now we're down to 6 with Tom not being here. And we still got a 5-person quorum.
I will be here, Kathy. The ARPA meeting is likely going to be right before this meeting, just as an FYI.
Do you think you're going to be late?
I will leave if I have to.
Okay. All right. Good. Because we need you for this one, obviously. So we can start with IT, Tim, because we want Brian, we want those guys to hear what gets said at that meeting as far as IT goes, right? So let's start with IT, then we'll go to the other ones.
So, Adam, can you not make the 19th or the 20th?
I can make the 19th. I can't make the 20th. I was just clarifying the date because in my emails with Brian, he was proposing that those groups all come the same night, and I was going to bring it up, but it sounds like that's already the plan. So I just wanted to confirm the date for him.
So your emails with Brian.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means.
I was emailing him about the insurance budget. It's just like a random tangent to our emails.
Okay, so
Kathy,
he
we're pretty-
wanted, because we're gonna do that on the second. Surely he doesn't want to do that the same night, because that's a big, long
That's,
discussion.
yeah, no, this was separate from that.
Okay, all right. Okay,
So on-
so everybody-
So on the 19th, I think we're just missing Tom, right?
that's what, no one has said they're not being, the 20th, it's up to you. You know, I'm just going to post a meeting in case there's a quorum, so we don't have to have a quorum. But I'm just doing that out of a abundance of caution.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody understand?
I'll
Okay.
be at both.
Okay. All right, somebody's here.
Yeah, I see Amy.
Yeah, so
see
you're
Donnie.
ready. Yeah, so she's coming over.
Hello, am I the first
Hey.
one here?
You
from our
are,
group?
you are.
Well, hello.
Okay, now there's somebody else over there too. I don't know who CMLA member Zoom might be.
What is it?
It says as a description, CMLA member Zoom as far as the name goes. CM.
Nope,
Oh, no, it's not Janet. I wouldn't think.
Jane's not coming.
It's Ryan Donovan. Okay, so it's Ryan, Amy. That's what.
Okay.
So it's Ryan. Good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, we
So
got a
I'll-
little,
Go ahead.
I would say the change in our schedule, so I'm sure they're gonna be coming in staggered, but
Well, Ryan
We're-
went to the Friends meeting, so we knew why he was coming. Plus, you guys weren't supposed to be on to 8:30, and
Right.
Council on Aging, Pam is very sick, so she couldn't come.
Oh.
So we moved you up a little bit.
although I think we can't speak as a board until 8:30 because of the posting of meetings, so.
Unless, well, you can speak as long as you don't have a quorum,
Right.
and you speak, that you can do. So we'll watch. So how many are on your board? How many people?
There are 6, I think 4 are attending, which is quorum, but
Okay.
they might all not be here till 8:30 since it doesn't. We can't speak. I think Ryan said he's going to present first, so.
So is Ryan coming over?
Yeah, it says it's Ryan, hold on. So I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it looks like he bounced off, so maybe he's logging in through a different account or something.
Probably.
So he's the one that said, hold on?
Yes.
Okay.
On the chat, it just said, hold on. So I would imagine he's switching to probably a different. Usually his says Ryan, so.
And Janet's here, so she can come over.
On it.
There she is. Unmute, my dear. Unmute, Janet. There you are. There you are. So, Janet, we're watching. As soon as you guys have a quorum, someone's going to have to call your meeting. Who is the chair of?
Marguerite Landry.
Yeah,
Is
and
she
she'll be
coming?
here.
Okay, so as soon as she gets here, assuming she's the 4th, she should call me into order, but you
Well,
guys
I
can
think
talk. You
She
can talk.
can't, well, she
can't.
posted the meeting for 8:30, so
I
she
know,
can't.
so I agree. So she won't call to order at 8:30, except that if you get a quorum before 8:30, we're going to have to kick one of you probably out until 8:30.
Okay.
So Janet, Pam from Senior Center they were supposed to be here, but she's very sick, so that's why we moved you up a little bit. So, well, that's pretty funny, his picture. What is that?
Uh-oh. I wish I knew how to do that, replace my name with.
Really?
Hey, everybody, I'm just trying to get my camera on, so bear with me. Sorry, I was concurrently in a Friends of the Library meeting, which is still going on, so.
Kathy, do we want to just take a half-hour break until they're ready to convene? I mean, it's kind of like if enough library people join, we can't really go on, right? Then somebody has to leave. We have to kind of wait till 8:30 anyway.
I thought
I hate-
Ryan was gonna start presenting information.
Great, I think that
Yes.
was his plan. So
I hate to lose 30 minutes.
So, yeah, I figured, I mean, I don't know if the board, first of all, I don't know if my board's gonna have quorum. And then I don't know if they're gonna need to vote on anything. So the answer to both of those might be no. So I figured, I mean, if you guys are okay with the trustees who are here participating as individuals, and then if they need to take a vote or make a decision, they could convene as a group, starting at 8:30.
That's correct. And FYI, I did post a amended agenda to show that Council on Aging wasn't going to be here. And I did put 8 o'clock for the public to see that this part was going to start. So they're perfectly legal staying here and talking as individual members of the Board of Trustees. They're fine. They just don't have a meeting that they have to record. Okay, so Ryan, why don't you, let's just go through the budget first. We'll keep watching what's going on. Who do you think the fourth person is besides Marguerite?
The CMLA was me. That was the hosting.
No, the fourth board
Who's the
member,
fourth
David,
library?
David, I think, right, Brian?
David, if David comes on, I didn't get a chance to touch base with him. So I
Okay.
don't know if he's able to hop on tonight with us. I know Jane Davis and Kim Regan can't join us.
All right.
So.
Okay, so I sent the most recent library budget to Eric and to Andrew a few minutes ago. So can one of you share the screen with us as far as that budget goes?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I can share it. I had it up.
All right.
And delete my notes. I may not.
And while he's doing that, let me just introduce everybody here. So to advisory, Janet Maney and Amy Estani are both on the Library Board of Trustees. And Ryan is our library director and has been for several years now.
So there's a lot of new members, I think, who I haven't gotten an opportunity to meet. And I'm sorry that I had such trouble logging in. I'm usually better at Zoom than I am tonight.
Quite all
So
right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Janet and Amy, we've got 4 new advisory members this year, which is quite a bit. 4 out of 7 are new, but they're doing a great job. We start at 7:30 because they, most of them have very young children they need to get home from work from and deal with. So we have tried to accommodate that, but they are picking up things very fast. So I'm sure they'll have excellent questions. Tom is the liaison from advisory to library. So I'm going to turn this over to him now. So Tom, why don't you take it from here as far as introducing the budget and then let Ryan talk about the details.
Just FYI, I think Kim Regan is actually going to be joining us too from the board, it looks like. So if you see somebody try to get in, it's probably Kim Regan.
Okay, so we'll watch. Okay, so Tom, you want to take it from here as far as just teeing this up and then letting Ryan go into the details?
Sure. Yeah, Ryan and I met a few weeks ago before the holidays, so I just pulled up my notes from that meeting. And obviously Ryan can give a lot more color to this stuff. I know that, and Ryan, obviously, once I just give this brief intro, you can provide more details or if anything's changed since we met before Christmas. But the main thing that he had there was in the that he had mentioned to me to highlight in that first in row 4, 51100. The increase was due to the addition, the changing in the way that they staffed in terms of eliminating multiple part-time roles and getting that full-time role established. And then the other thing that I had noted that he had talked about was the oh yeah, the programming numbers. That's in row 13. Obviously, some of this, as Ryan mentioned, has been a moving target with the effects of COVID going on and trying to budget for different types of programs that are, you know, adaptable, I guess you would say. He also talked about how some of the budgeting things for programs used to not be budgeted for anything, and that they relied more on the Friends group for that programming money, but there was less money coming in from that Friends group. So they wanted to actually make that a line item in the budget going forward, so they weren't reliant on donations to fund community programming. And let me just see if there's any other highlights on this that he mentioned.
I know the selectmen did also highlight the professional development line because that was up, and I'll speak to that, I think, when we I mean, I can talk now, but I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, that's fine. That was the other thing. I was trying to translate my notes from a month ago. I had professional development. It said to apply for grants, so something that you had mentioned in relation to that, for people to and also people joining professional organizations. And then 53,500. Oh, that's the programming line. We already talked about that. Oh, and we talked about the subscriptions too, right? You said there were no plans, unless that's changed since we talked, for adding any new subscriptions. And that kind of went to changes in customer demand, right? During trying to make things during COVID, with the changing demands that people were having from the library. I think those are the things that I had highlighted, but please feel free to add anything that I missed there. But those are the ones that I had, those are the row numbers that I had highlighted from our talk last month. And then the main thing being going into the way that you had changed around the personnel to make those staffing things more permanent on that third librarian role, if I'm phrasing that correctly. So I'll leave it at that, since you're obviously the expert on this and I'm going off of notes from what you told me. So I'll leave it there for you, Ryan.
No, you did a great job. And I have to commend Mr. Wilson. He sat with me for over an hour, which is, you know, tough to listen to me talk about the library budget for that long. So
you put up with my kids running around in the library, so that's
they can come anytime. So with the salaries, I guess just very quickly going over the salaries, because I know those look like sort of big percentage jumps. The reason why full-time is at 4.7 and not at 3, because most of the rates should be a 3% increase, is we had a staff retirement for a full-time senior library assistant, which is a paraprofessional position. If members who were here recall, about 3 years back, right prior to that flood that the library had, that we all remember, we spent a year creating an assistant director position. The assistant director was hired. She worked for about a year and then left to become the director at the Hudson Library. Then that position was sort of defunct. We hired another paraprofessional position following her departure. Kim last year was promoted. She was our children's librarian into the assistant director position because she increasingly is helping me with administrative responsibilities, and she took on a lot more during COVID to kind of help me run things just because it became necessary. Following that, we wanted to have somebody kind of take point with the library's new teen room that we built after the flood remediation. So we had the children's librarian position, and it actually, the description talked a lot about youth services as a group, both younger and older children. So we decided to retitle that position Youth Services Librarian. That was approved by my board last November. So the library board of trustees voted it, and I'm happy to report to you and to the trustees that are here that the personnel board approved that change this morning. So as of the SAP next year, there will be the 3 full-time professional library positions are going to be library director, assistant library director, and youth services
Okay,
librarian.
now hold the thought for a moment. First of all, Kim and Marguerite are in the audience, so we need to bring them over. And why don't you pull up the Excel worksheet that shows the salary details? It's the next tab.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, Kathy.
Okay, makes it easier to follow what you're saying.
Yeah, so you'll see that because of when we submitted the budget, Mariana Sorensen was the children's librarian for all intents and purposes, but we'll be able to retitle that in next year's budget because of both the trustees and the personnel board's vote. So that's exciting for me, maybe for no one else.
Okay,
Hopefully for
now to be
Mariana.
clear, Kim is on the library board or not?
Kim Ivers. Yeah, Kim. So there's Kim Ivers and there's Kim Regan. We got
Right, so
two-
Kim Regan is here. Is she on the board?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you guys have a quorum right now. You got 4 people.
Yeah, I guess Marguerite, do you want to call the meeting to order? Kathy says, because the advisory agenda says,
I say 8 o'clock. I think you're safe going ahead and calling to order now at 8:15, even though.
All right, that's
8:30.
fine. I'm calling the Southborough Library Trustees special meeting to order at 8:15.
Okay, welcome Marguerite, welcome Kim.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work on our behalf, advisory people.
Well, thank you for all your work and all you do. So we just got started. We're just going, we basically have just started with the budget. So you have not missed much. Okay, sorry. Ryan, back to you.
no, so that's it for the full-time. Are there any, I guess, do you want me to pause, Kathy? Do you want me to go over everything and then go to questions? Or do we want to like break it up into, I talk about a section and then we get questions? Do you feel like that'll take too long?
Let me see whether advisory members wanted to talk about salaries or you want him to go on and talk about programs. It's basically the 2 topics tonight are programs and salaries. You want to keep going and then we'll come back?
I can finish out salaries. I can talk about the part-time and the longevity changes and
Yes.
then.
So do that.
Okay. So as a result of COVID, which I think many departments were not immune to, we had a lot of part-time staff members either accept positions elsewhere or outright or reduce their schedules greatly because of other full-time positions or other roles that they were doing. So for instance, Val DeAngelis, it now works full-time as a teacher, and she now minimized her library schedule to just work very part-time on weekends. So that's one example. But and Nikayla, who's on our budget, actually left the library in December. So there's a couple. We're trying to rehire one position right now for Nikayla leaving, but the schedule kind of reflects an average of the staff members that have worked over the last year. So that was a question the trustees had for me, which was we reduced the number of part-time hours, but it was very important for me for the budget to reflect what I think part-time staffing will look like in the next year and a half. And that is really what this budget reflects. I think that really is an average of the hours you're going to see week to week for those employees.
Ryan,
So, go ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ryan. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Um, So I'm just trying to track some of the math on this. It's a little bit small. Is the total part-time hours per week 80 hours? Is it 2 people at a time?
So the hours per week you can see across the associate positions is 8 hours.
8 per week. So total for, I guess, can you explain the part-time staffing and how that all works per week?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much time we're gonna get into the library's schedule. Staff, so we have to cover, in addition to all of the full-time people, 54 hours a week. There are 3 distinct service points at the library. So there's what I call the main floor circulation desk upstairs. What most people know is the area you check out at the library. There's the downstairs children's room. And then adjacent to that, there's the downstairs teen space, which is in a slightly separate area. So we like to have, at a minimum, 2 people at the main floor circulation desk, 1 person in children's, and during times that teenagers would be in. So we try not to staff it during hours that the kids would be in school, somebody in the teen room. In addition to that, a lot of those names you see at the end of the schedule are part-time library pages. Those individuals, for the most part, are high school students who come in after school to shelve books, make sure the books are put in order, empty the book drop, tasks like that. So the reason why the hours per week for the pages is a lot lower is because they tend to work 2 2-hour shifts per week. And then the associates, that's an average of all the hours worked. They typically work like a range. So some work, like I would say, 1 night and 1 weekend. Some of them have morning and afternoon shifts, depending on the needs of the library. So that gives you kind of a rough idea. We usually open with an associate. We try to have an associate on the afternoon for the days we're open 11 hours a week, which is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then we try to have appropriate associate staff help us cover the weekends. Does that answer your question, Adam?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. That's a very, very Cliff Notes version of it. I mean, I can give you more detailed information if you want, but I don't. We got more of the budget to go through, so we can go back to salaries, I think, later if you guys want.
All right, so does anyone have any other questions on salaries before we go on to the programs?
Yeah, I do. I'm just still trying to absorb some of this. So is there somewhere on here that has the last fiscal year salaries for all the full-time employees?
The previous budget would, yeah, so that you can kind of see, it doesn't have the detail breakdown that this year's does. I could send you last year's budget. And I think some of the, yeah.
So Adam, it's pretty much, if you go back to the salary detail, it's going to be whatever the rate is there, 3% less, with the exception of Kim, who went from a grade 5 to a grade 6. That's why it's more than 3%.
Okay, so everyone got a 3%, and then Kim has an additional because of the change specifically to that role.
I believe that's right. Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, also Mariana Sorensen. So Mariana Sorensen is at a grade 5 now. The previous position was a grade 3 in SAP Schedule A. So that is another big change, I would say, because we went from having 4 paraprofessional staff members, 2 senior library assistants and 2 library assistants, to now having what we're going to call youth services librarian and a senior library assistant, and then we still have the 2 library assistants. So there was actually 2 grade changes in the last year. I don't make things easy. Sorry.
Any other questions on salaries? So I've got one. So Ryan, why work 38 hours? What's the magic of the 38 hours versus 40?
That is a historic thing that happened with those employees. I can't actually answer that, Kathy. I don't know why why the positions previously were at 38 hours. When I got to the library, 2 of the paraprofessional positions were at 32 hours. And with staff attrition and transfer to other departments, those positions became 38-hour positions. Because honestly, that meant that the full-time employees only worked 4 days a week. And that was very problematic to try to schedule those staff members. So there's 2 days that 3 days rather, because we're open Saturday too, that the library is open 7 hours a week. So those paraprofessional staff members, they don't work an 8-hour day, they work a 7-hour day.
Janet, you may remember, this rings a bell. I think a few years ago that this was part of a budget cut, going from 40 to 38, but I could be wrong. It is what it is.
Isn't it I think it's an avoidance of benefits.
No, because
Costs.
benefits are 19
Ah,
and a half, so it's not that. So
No.
They do accrue week to week. I think they do accrue, if they were at 40, they'd accrue slightly more vacation and sick time, but it's probably nominal.
but
I
are
think.
they eligible for health insurance?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Oh, great. Okay, good.
Not even close.
Because otherwise it
Okay.
feels like we're nickel and diming people out of their benefits.
Yeah. So no, 19 is your crossover there. Okay. Any other questions on the salary spreadsheet before we go on to programs?
I did real quick, and maybe I just heard this wrong. Ryan, I believe you, by the way, I'm Eric. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you guys for everything you do. My daughter loves it. I thought I heard you say that you needed somewhere around 50 or 54 hours on the part-time, but then when I do the quick auto sum on this, I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm seeing like 84 hours. Did I just mishear you wrong, or is there a
No,
calculation here I'm
so
misunderstanding?
we are covering 54 hours a week that the library's open. So
Okay.
yeah, so not, it doesn't have to add up to 54 hours. There are times that there are 2 associates working at the same time, depending on again, what I have to go to that, what the needs of the department are, but it is specifically about staffing the service points, right? And then I say this, I give you guys an average because let's say I don't take a lot of vacation, but let's say Kim is out for a week, right? In between summer reading and the school year starting. We need to have part-time staff members fill that because I can't not staff the children's room, right? So even if I'm in the children's room, I might not be helping out on the circulation desk. So we sometimes have part-time people fill in there too. So it tends to be flexible. And then, you know, again, this is an average of all the hours worked based on that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure I was hearing it and understanding it. So thank you.
Yeah, and honestly, the associate staff are really the desk, they cover the desk. So it would be those 8-hour employees we don't leave the high school kids alone to cover a service point. So I just want to make that very clear. They do assist, and I will tell you, the high school kids really like checking people in and out. I see them kind of light up when they get to do it, but we don't want to leave them alone. We want to make sure they have a supervisor and they have support while they're doing it.
As somebody whose first job was at my town's public library, yeah, that sounds a lot more fun than putting them books back on the shelves. Anyway, thanks so much.
Anyone else before we move on? All right, so now let's go back to the main spreadsheet. So before Ryan gets into the programs, let's just, again, provide some background like we did last week. So just like Youth and Family Services, the library also has a supporting 501c3 called the Friends of the Library, which is where Ryan was before he came into this meeting. Separate legal entity, separate board from the elected board that we're talking to tonight. So Janet and Amy and Marguerite and Kim are all elected. So the Friends of the Library, completely separate. There's no crossover there, as far as I know. And they have their own fundraisers where they raise money to support the library, and they make their own decision as to how the money they raise shall be used. The library can ask for it. They can make suggestions, but it's still up to the Friends to say yes. And I'm pointing this out because what we have tried to do for years is make sure that the town budget reflects what it should reflect as far as what the town should pay for. We don't want departments relying necessarily on the Friends money to do things that the town should do itself. It should be in the town's budget. The Friends money should be to do things that the town can't do or shouldn't do. I want to make sure that's clear, because what Ryan's going to explain in a second about the programs is important to understand that as far as background goes. Okay, so Ryan, with that segue, let's talk about the program for the library.
So just to give you, I guess, better background, we've looked at the amount of money that the Friends have contributed over the past few years. And this is information that I've provided to the selectmen because they also asked about the programming increase. So we get, at a minimum, about $10,000 a year from the Friends in order to support the library. So that just gives you a financial figure right there. About 4.2 of that on average just supports the Museum Pass program. So we have tried over the years, because the Friends tend to fluctuate that list. If the pass is not very popular, the Friends reconsider and sometimes vote not to renew it. As you can imagine, that's not very popular with the public. They like to have a consistent list. And then if they came in, 6 months ago to go to the Danforth Museum at FSU, and then we don't have it anymore, they're confused. So if the Friends sometimes vote not to carry a museum anymore, we look to see if there's a budget capacity to do that within our materials line item, because the passes circulate and they count as a circulating item. The Friends still, we could not offer, to be blunt, museum passes without the Friends. They do all the big ones. So the New England Aquarium, the Children's Museum, the Museum of Fine Arts, all the big ones in Boston, and the ones that are the most popular are the ones they pay for. And those are the big part of the price tag. So where does, after you subtract the 4.2, where does all the rest of the money go? Directly into programs. And about 2 to 2.5 of that is just to support the youth summer reading program that Kim puts on every year. So if you recall, or if you've seen pictures, we do like puppet shows. We had a bubble man one year who did these big bubbles on the lawn. And I kid you not when I say we had 300 people come to see this guy make bubbles. So he was doing something right. I'll say right there. But they're vendors and they get paid as sort of entertainers to put on programs. Frequently, we try to have both an entertainment, but also educational slant to some of the programs. So you'll see the Museum of Science sometimes brings animals, right? There's also been STEM programs where they're more science-based. We also work with that local theater group who does sort of putting on performances and plays and has the kids work on that. So there's value, I would just say, in the programs that we put on. We were able to provide a lot of programs during COVID because we were able to switch a lot of them to virtual. One of them in particular, I guess one of my favorites, are these sort of afternoon craft programs that we call crafternoons, just to maintain that. So we pay the vendor about $250 per session. And that, it may seem like a lot, but she provides all of the materials for us, for the kids. And during COVID, she individually bagged these. And for the first year, she mailed them to patrons' homes for us so that they could do them over Zoom. So when I say that this vendor went above and beyond, I think what she should have in order to help provide the programs during that time, I'm not kidding there.
Yeah, she's worth every penny, every penny.
Yeah. So we have been able to provide those programs over the past few years because of in many cases, grant funding. So I have gone to the Mass Cultural Council. I have gone to the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, and we've applied for Library Services and Technology Act grant funds. So that's like the garden program you saw. It was the creative technology that we have in the teen room. So sort of the makerspace. We have a 3D printer, things like that. That was all grant funded. A lot of times when you apply for these grants, they want the programs to end up becoming sustainable. so that you can then budget for them and you can maintain those things. Year to year, they're not going to give you grants because for the same thing, because those then become operating costs. So we're very thankful for all the support that the Friends have given us. But also, I can share with you, we ran a book sale during Heritage Day. It made less than half of what their normal revenue for that event was. And I think what we're going to see in the next few years is diminishing returns. Even if we're able to run a book sale, I don't think that we're going to see the same level of foot traffic and people showing up to buy used books that we did before. And in many cases, it's counterintuitive. We want people to come to the library and borrow books for free. We don't really want to be the bookstore where people buy them, right? So I'm just mindful of this fact, is that the Friends are not, they're a support organization, but they really have traditionally only done a couple fundraisers a year. And some of those do not raise a lot of money, right? When they do like the nights where you can go to a restaurant and get a kickback, we're talking about maybe like a couple $100. So that supports, now, one program. It's not really feasible for us to go to them, I guess, and ask for the amount of money we do every year. Also, this has been discussed with the Library Board of Trustees, and they're in session, so they can talk to you guys on this if they want to comment on it. But they really feel because I've talked with them, that programming is an operational cost. It's integral to what we do to try to provide programs to the public and help inform them on things that are going on in the community. We've worked with the Open Space Preservation Commission over the years fairly successfully on doing seed sowing workshops, on doing public presentations on native pollinators. These are all things that, looking forward, we really want to continue and support. So just for the craft programs, if we do one a month and it's $250, that is half of the total programming cost. So I also say this because some of the Friends may be watching. We still will need Friends support, but we don't want to be entirely reliant on it. And that is sort of what this proposal is.
So Ryan, the increase from 1 to 5, is that arbitrary? Do you know that the Friends contribution for programs? So does everybody understand, if you look at fiscal 22, those costs of those programs you just described are not in that budget. Those bills have gone right to Friends, they've paid them, and or they've gotten grant money that has then used to pay. So that's not in that budget. And so they're asking now to put some of these program cost into their official town budget. That's what the 1 to 5 is. But is that an arbitrary increase, or have you really sat down and said, these are the programs we did last year, this is what we think the cost is for fiscal 23, and these are the ones we want to move over to the town budget? Or is it not quite as definitive as that?
No, so about, again, looking at it, it was kind of sitting down and looking at it. So it is a nice even number, because I do like those, but it was really with half of it going towards the craft programming, half of it, like about 2K, going to support summer reading, and then the other one for maybe one adult program was what I was looking at. So that kind of is the rough breakdown of the programming. I could have asked for more. I wanted to have a budget proposal that made sense. I'd say a jump from 1 to 5 is a big jump, at least for me. A lot of people are asking why we're going that much higher. So I think it's a big jump for everybody who's looking at it. But I think when you know and are familiar with the amount of programming that the library does, one of the things that people do ask is that enough? And I would say, to support every program the library does, no, but that gets us in a much better place than it did previously. And that helps the budget really pick up, I would say, the majority, of the recurring programs we do. And the one last thing I'll say, Kathy, and then I'll stop talking because I know I'm talking a lot, is that we looked at if COVID is still a serious issue in the next year. And I think part of what I have to plan for now is looking at if these programs have to go entirely virtual, what does that environment look like? And then, we can do outdoor programming. We proved that last summer. So that is also sort of taking all of that into account.
Can I jump in for 2 seconds on this? Just Marguerite, the chair. Historically, when I joined the board about 10 years ago, the programming budget was $2,000, and the Friends were a lot more flush than they are now. Partly because of the way the book sales have shrunk from making under $1,000 when they used to make $2,000. So what had happened with the board is when we had to tighten our belts, as everyone did, programming was what went. And we decided that that was the thing that we could try to scramble and fund from other sources. But it's not been an efficient use of Ryan's time in terms of running the library, or the other people who have applied for grants, that they need to spend time that should be spent on operations, applying for funds, a bit here and a bit there to run programs, which in my opinion, we desperately need a lot more of, because
Yes.
Crafternoons hits a certain demographic, but it doesn't hit seniors who might want a program about something that they're interested in, or very smaller children. So I just want to say that historically there was a much bigger programming budget, and about 7 or 8 years ago it went down to 0, and then it's been slowly eking up, but it's never been where it really works for our director, because he spends a lot of time trying to discover pockets of money to run programs. Anyway.
Margarita, Ryan, do you guys have the number from, say, this year that is going to be spent in total on programs from funded by grants and Friends money? Do you know if Friends is 10, do you know what the grants are?
Well, so the Friends ended up spending a little bit more the previous year, but I can, because we did this for the town meeting handout. So I have to commend Kim Regan, who helped go through all of this with me and add all the numbers up. But in the last year, when we prepped for the town meeting, including the Friends, it was just under $30,000 that we had spent on everything. So that gives you an idea of what the total cost is. If we look at a new initiative at the library, and there's a couple demographics we're not reaching, right? We could do more for teen programming, more for senior programming. Those are things that I'm looking at without sort of stepping on the toes of the senior center or the schools. We want to make sure that what we're doing at the library is consistent with our mission and what we want to do as an organization. But I'd like to reach some of those groups and get more of them in the library. Those are things we may still look at grant funding for. So I want to say, this doesn't mean we're not going to ask the Friends to support new programming, and it doesn't mean we're not applying for grants. What we would like is some operational support to help a chunk of this, because it's such an important part of what we do. And we've raised so much money over the past couple of years with grant funding and Friends support.
Okay, so
But that's
stick
been a
with
lot of
fiscal year
work, too.
21. Fiscal year 21, $800. That's all you had in your budget. So are you saying you raised, $29,200 between grants and Friends money for the year we just ended?
Yep.
Okay, so if you get 5 for fiscal year 23, you're still, if you want to do the same things you did for that year, as you did the year that just ended, you're going to need still $25,000 of money from grants and or Friends to do it, correct?
Correct.
And that's
All right.
without adding anything new too.
Now, I should know the answers, but I don't. Janet, maybe you remember it. The cherry sheet money that comes for libraries every year that the state approves.
Mhm.
That just goes right to the general fund, correct? You're not getting that separately to do anything, correct?
No, Ryan, what do you call that? That is a fund that we have.
Are you talking about state aid?
Yes.
Yes.
The
That doesn't
the
go to
state
federal.
aid, the state aid that the library gets back that gets issued by the MBLC does go in a separate fund, Kathy, and it is available to the library to spend on programs. It's available for any library related purpose, so it can be used for programming as well.
Okay, so do you tend to use that also?
We have in the past.
Okay.
Right now, I
But we-
think state aid dealt with a computer need that we had and a couple of other things, and it's not really there's not really that much money in state aid right now. So what, $8,000, Ryan? What do we have?
Didn't we use that for the new printer?
Yep.
Yeah, we got a new copy machine last year and it was about $10,000 and we used pretty much all the state aid money we got that year went
Right.
to the copy machine.
Right.
We have more than 8,000 though. It's
Okay, so that's off budget too. You're spending that also, just to make it clear, right?
yes.
Okay,
Right.
so that's not in this budget too. Okay, all right, so I've asked enough as far as kind of clarifying, what you still need to receive in order to continue the programs that you want to continue. Okay, so anything else you want to say, Ryan, before we start asking questions?
I can't believe you want me to talk more, Kathy. I
think
that
you're excellent. I love listening to you. So if you've got anything else to say it.
I did see you guys had highlighted the print and electronic subscriptions. One thing I'll say is previously we got a grant, right? Because we do that at the library to support electronic access to consumer reports, which had been suggested by Mr. Litt, I think a couple of years ago. And so I had applied for a grant through ALA. I got the grant, and this is the first year we're going to have to pay for the electronic access to consumer reports. So that's pretty much the increase in the subscription. One thing that I should knock on my desk here, sometimes the subscription costs for databases does jump, and that has not happened during COVID. They have kept that pretty consistent. So I'm happy to report that the only increase in that line is for consumer reports, and that's specifically where that increase comes from. That's line 16 for you guys looking at the spreadsheet, the print and electronic subscriptions. So that are both electronic database costs and also the newspapers and the magazines physically that the library receives and circulates.
There's a detail of that one too on this workbook. Can we go to that? There you go.
Yes, so I gave a breakdown of that. And there's also a breakdown of dues because that's a bigger line item. And so I wanted you guys to see where all of the individual costs went.
Okay, so you had a grant for a part of this?
Consumer reports.
Yeah, the consumerreports.org, 1170.
Yep, number 8, EBSCOconsumerreports.org. That is new.
It's new, or you had a grant for it?
We had a grant last year for it.
Okay,
This
so now
year we have to pay for it if we want to continue it, which we do.
And the rest of the increase is just because they're costing more? There's nothing new?
No, everything else is the same. Some of the costs went up a little bit, but not super significantly.
Do we have any data around usage of those subscriptions?
We do a monthly report that's prepared by our library associate, Carol Logan. I don't have the most recent one handy, but I can send you the usage reports on all of them.
Ryan, you feel comfortable that all those subscriptions are being utilized and are still worth it?
Yes, and that was something I asked the library board of trustees during the last budget process, if we wanted to look at potentially cutting one of the subscriptions. I will say we saw a significant, we sometimes had to kind of talk people into using these, right? And convince them they were good and important. And when COVID hit and the library first shut down, nobody needed to be convinced. Everybody started using these. And then because we're allowing people to basically order library cards, we're doing mail order library cards, they could then immediately use these resources once we mailed them. And the postage was paid for by the Friends. So I should thank the Friends for that publicly. But the usage, I have to say, has been fairly consistent with all of these. And then we had a feeling like consumer reports would be well utilized by the public, and it is. So Freegal, which is one of our highest one, is a music streaming and download service that is consistently the most popular, which is for the first couple years we had it, we had maybe 20 users, and now we have hundreds of people who use it. So we found that COVID has helped us find our electronic database audience, which is exciting for me. if we can look at one silver lining of this sort of horrible couple years that we've been
Yeah,
going through.
I think the one I look at and I raise my eyebrow a little bit is the newspaper. Why do we have
Yeah.
newspapers?
The news bank one.
Yeah.
Yep. So that gives us access to over, I think, 300 individual subscriptions. And then we no longer get the print copy of the Worcester Telegram, because that was costing, the print edition was costing the library about $1,000 a year. The news bank subscription service, about 400 of that goes towards a complete visual version of the paper. So you can like look at every article in the paper, and it's half the cost of the print one.
Or you could go online to your news channel of choice and get it for free. I'm not certain I understand why.
If you go to the Worcester Telegram, it says you have to pay to access the articles.
Come on, you can go pick one. I mean, flavor of the day, right? You know, AP News, Fox News, CNN, whatever your flavor is. The news is free nowadays. I don't understand why we're paying $2,500 for a subscription for news.
Well, Tim, I'll push back a little bit. I think if you separate, look at people by age group. Yeah, young people don't read newspapers, but older, I don't pick that age, 45 and over, 50 and over. There's still people that like to read newspapers, truly newspapers, and you're not going to get can you get the Boston Globe doing this, Ryan?
Yes, and we also, as part of there's an additional ProQuest subscription to the Boston Globe, which doesn't give you the most recent edition of it, but we have access to that as well. So we have a couple ways to access the Globe.
It's still online, Kathy.
Yeah, but you still pay for the Globe online.
But older people are not going to go to the library so that they can read the Boston Globe online. Nobody's going to do that. Everybody has a computer at their house.
But they can do it on their own computer or on their own iPad.
You can get it at home through the library for nothing.
Yeah, it has remote authentication, so people can log in from home with their library card.
And do you have usage on that?
Yes, I can give you the full usage information on all the databases. If I send it to you, Kathy, do you want to send it to the rest?
I'll circulate it. So, but bottom line, you are reviewing the usage, and therefore will drop something that you don't think is being used appropriately.
Yep.
And just to be clear, I can log on and read the day's Boston Globe if I want to.
I have to double check that. I know you can do the Worcester Telegram for today. I know that. I have to double check the Globe.
But I'm not trying to take the money away from you. I would rather you take that money and pour it into things like the music or the resume builder or the job help or what have you, right?
I can tell you that the news bank is part of a shared consortial resource, and it was started by the Shrewsbury Library a number of years ago, and the subscription service was supplemented by a grant that Shrewsbury was given, and then we paid a fraction of that. So we are still in it with I think 4 or 5 other libraries, and Tim is right to point this out. It's one of the bigger ones, and the cost has gone up because other members of the consortium have left over the years. So that is one, I think, in the future, depending on how much it's going to go up, we may have to reevaluate. So I can tell you, Tim, we look at these year to year, we look at what the usage is, and then that is something that I may bring to the board at some point and say, it might not make financial sense for us to continue with this resource.
Yep.
Yeah, the board goes over them every year, Tim, and we have dropped a number of them, which simply we're not getting the numbers.
Okay.
I can tell you two of the resources that are used the least are the legal document resource and the resume builder, which are something that I think is valuable for the library to have. We do have people who use them, but they don't have the wide usage of Freegal, I'll say. So, part of this is they're also not as expensive as the other resources too. So I look at having things that I think are valuable and that I know people will need. Like if somebody comes in and needs resume help, we do have this resource we can point people to, and we have in the past and they've used it. I don't know if seeing the number of people who use the newspapers resource, Tim, would make you feel better about it. It might, because it does get usage. So
send it to me and I will circulate.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else having questions on their proposed subscription list and cost? All right, so let's go back to the main spreadsheet with the budget on it. Okay, so I'm looking at your cherry sheet from last year. The library got $15,000. So if we hadn't brought this up, the Board of Trustees would have another $15,000 to spend, right, Marguerite? Beyond your budget? Assume the state money is the same for fiscal year 23. So assuming you get another 15, you'd be able to spend that 15 too, correct?
Oh, the state aid. Yes, it has bailed us out any number of times. We had, as I said, we had that copier that the public uses completely die on us, and we had no way for people coming to the library who needed to make copies, which they do in surprising numbers, to be able to do that. In fact, we had to take our copying up to the townhouse to do it. So
I know that is a valuable service. Okay, so is there any limit on what you can use the state aid for? Is there any restrictions? Could you use it for programs if you wanted to?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The four people here, well, Kim, I don't know you as well as I do the other three. The other three are quite experienced as far as being sitting on lots of committees around town and have heard, these budget woes for years. Janet was on advisory. So let me tell you what the problem is this year. It's not the usual problem. The actual budget itself didn't start off looking as horrible as it usually does. It was about half as horrible as it usually is. The problem is because of COVID, the prices of houses have shot way up in Southborough like they have everywhere else. And so therefore the houses are going to bear more of the budget than what they have in the past. And it's going to make the increase to houses really big, even with a low budget. So that's the problem we're fighting right now. So, we just can't win. So 2.5% looks great, right? Compared to what we've seen sometimes in the past, but it's because of this divergence in the values of commercial properties versus houses that is going to be a real significant issue for the fiscal year 23 taxes. So I don't know where we're going to end up here. We want to hear everything and then decide what we think is appropriate. But that's kind of our major issue right now is that split. So yes, our houses are worth more.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
What are you trying to, what's your goal? To have zero tax increase, zero budget increase this year?
No. So we focus on the tax increase to houses, Janet, right?
I know. So you're getting more money in, but you don't want to just spend it.
Well, it's not that. We don't want the increase to houses to be something crazy. Shrewsbury's was 15% this last year because of the same problem that we're talking about. Ours was more than what we had thought it was going to be at town meeting because of it. So 1/1/21, there was a divergence. We think it's going to be a bigger divergence of 1/1/22. It's hard to project. So we're going to try real hard to at least get an estimated values so we know what to work with. So again, it's not the problem with the budget. I think the budget actually, we can come up with a pretty good overall increase in the overall budget. It's just the piece that the houses have to pay for. And that's
Kathy,
what we try to control.
Could you clarify something for me? If a person has a house and it's say $1 million, and then the value of the house goes up because other houses around it are being sold for more, are you concerned that someone who's owned the house at that price point all along is suddenly going to be hit by a larger bill, or is it the newer person coming in who's going to be paying more? I'm not exactly. I mean, I understand your point of view that you feel there'll be a lot of pushback if the taxes are going up, but is it because they're going up on people who had pre-existing ownership and then?
No, Marguerite, if everybody goes up at the same rate, so
Yeah,
As long as you go up as much as your neighbor does and everybody else, then your tax increase is going to be no different. It's the fact that these two groups of properties, one group has gone way up and one group hasn't. And therefore, the real estate tax burden is going to be shifted more to that one group that's gone up. So everybody's taxes are going to go up on the residential side, not just the new people coming in, not old people. It's everybody.
so that's a function of not having a split tax rate?
Well, if you had
It's really a
split
function of the commercial market, right? So it's the fact that COVID has hit businesses so hard and how their taxes are done.
Right.
But we don't redo the housing assessments every year, right?
Yeah, we
Isn't it?
do. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, we
Now he
do.
doesn't, they don't do the formal revaluation except every 3 years where they actually come and look at your house, whatever. But yeah, every year he goes in and looks at what's been sold and basically values every single property based on some formula that he uses. So yes, he does look at every one of them. So we just think, we've got to settle on what we're going to assume is the split before we really try to figure out what the budget's going to be. So we're having to back into it this year, which we normally don't have to do.
Right.
Same thing with Algonquin, Janet. Algonquin, basically sends an assessment to Northborough and one to Southborough based on the split is based on the schools, each town's population. And so Southborough has been going down relative to Northborough. So the split has favored Southborough. And so
Right.
therefore, even if Algonquin's budget goes up 5%, ours last year went up like 1% because we had a less percentage of the total in the school. So same thing is happening here with this, but it's just going the wrong way. It's going to hit the houses. So that's our problem, ladies, as far as trying to figure out this budget.
So it's kind of an artifact of the COVID situation.
Oh,
really.
it's absolutely. So hopefully after 1/1/22, but every time we think we're about to get in control, then, here comes another variant. So who knows when this is going to stop? So we know it's 1/1/22. Hopefully things will have calmed down by 1/1/23 and this big spike in housing prices is going to, at least for this purpose, level off. On the other hand, your house is worth more than it was.
Kathy, we're going to get back to the
Only
budget
if you
now.
sell it.
Yep. But I did that,
Well,
Andrew.
thank you for explaining the backstory
is
on all
great,
this.
2.5%. Yeah. Well, because you're probably going, hey, it's 2.5%. That's pretty good historically. Yes, it is historically pretty good. It's just we've got this other problem too. Now we got to solve. So, Andrew, I had to do that because the people in here have been part of this budget process for many years, and they're going, what more can we do? Okay, so back to the budget. Who's got questions on the remaining part of the budget? We've talked about salaries. We've talked about programming. We've talked about the subscriptions. Anybody else have any questions on anything else on here?
Can we go back to salaries very briefly,
You want to see the spreadsheet?
please?
Okay.
That's it. Okay. Thank you. No question.
So Eric, if you can go back to the main page for a second. What was the 24-28 for computer equipment maintenance that fell off?
Well, we got a note in putting the budget together that we were supposed to reduce that to 0.
Because they've consolidated it, right?
Yes, into IT.
Okay. So it's really a 2.9% increase, right? To make it even. And then the other one is in your dues. There's T-Mobile hotspots or host
Yes.
spots. Kathy, I know we've been moving a lot of the mobile into the IT budget. Is this another thing for consistency that we should be looking to move over there?
We should find out exactly. I think it's in John Parent's budget, the utilities budget, but whatever. A lot of it has been moved. We moved Board of Health last year, for example. So I don't know. Whether this kind of thing, I don't even understand what this is. I know what a hotspot is, but I don't know what we're doing here.
Can we get some background on this?
Yeah, on the hotspots themselves.
Yeah.
We got a grant. So I should say we signed up for a grant program through the state, through MBLC. They have a hotspot program that they offered all libraries. They gave us 16 months of hotspots for free. So we have 5 circulating hotspots at the library. They are hot items. So they tend to get checked out a lot. We put this in the budget with the idea that once it will be next fiscal year, that the 16 months is up. So if we wanted to continue having 5 hotspots, we looked at what the budgetary cost of those would be.
What do you mean by checked out?
Someone
They
can borrow
circulate.
a hotspot.
Yeah. Yep. So you can go to the library and you can check out a hotspot, a T-Mobile hotspot.
But what does it mean? You got, okay, so I'm just gonna be stupid. You got Wi-Fi there. What does it mean to check out a hotspot?
So you check out a hotspot, you can take it home. And then as long as it's in a T-Mobile service coverage area, you have internet if the hotspot is on. So you can, frequently it's people who travel from one area to another. So I can tell you during the holidays, they were very popular because people would be traveling and they might be like during the car ride, as long as you're in a T-Mobile service area, you have internet in your car.
So this has no restriction. It's not for school kids or anyone can check these out.
Yes.
Anyone with a library card.
Anyone
Right, you
with-
have to have a library card,
But
yeah, to check.
I'm
these out.
sorry, but why?
Yeah, I have the same question.
I mean,
Right.
that's like you telling me like, you know, no offense, I don't mean to be overly sarcastic, but like, is Omaha Steaks next? Like,
Well, no, we wouldn't check out steaks from the library.
yeah,
Because
but
that's-
why are you providing wireless service?
Well,
Well,
we
there- well,
provide,
There could be people who
it's an
don't
ex-
have Wi-Fi. I mean, that is reasonable. There's I'm sure not 100% of people
It's
in
not our
town.
responsibility to give private citizens in our town or even our other towns free Wi-Fi. If they want
Well,
to come to our
so-
library, if they want
there's
to come to our
school age-
library, that's different.
There's
But
school
letting
age-
them, but letting
that-
people check out a Wi-Fi and just go somewhere with it, what does that have to do with the library?
we're
Well, it's the
providing,
same as
we're
checking out a
providing
book.
internet. Yeah, we're providing internet to the public. We
We're
do that in the
providing a
building.
service, right?
Yeah, it's providing service to the public,
If
Tim.
we wanted to provide internet service to the public, why wouldn't the MIS department be responsible for that?
I think that because they can come to the library and get it as opposed to going wherever else they'd have to go to get it. It's like the same reason you'd give them music or movies. It's just a thing that makes life better for town residents.
Because we
Oh, but-
circulate items to the public, Tim, where they can come in and check out an item and then they return it. I don't think the MIS department has something like that set up.
But I'm with Tim on this one. It sounds like it's in the budget because you had a grant and now the grant's running out. So you're putting this in here rather than something you would have put in your budget without that grant to begin with. I just don't see why we're in the business again. I agree with Tim of providing internet service to people. Most people have it. There's lots of ways to get it. I just don't see why this is a library function.
Ryan,
Or
is it-
could we do one hotspot?
Well, is
Ryan,
there
how many different people make use of this? Is this something that like 15 people know about and use often? Or is this something, that?
We
hundreds of people
probably,
know?
I think we've had about 20 individual users check them out since we started circulating them. I would say, I think it was in October. It was like sometime in mid-October. So we did there was I think a My Southborough post, and we advertised them because the state gave us resources, like flyers that advertised them. So if you go into the libraries, you exit, you'll see the hotspot flyers saying you can check out a hotspot from the library.
Ryan, do you know why the Mass Board of Library Commissioners decided this was a worthwhile thing for libraries in the state to be doing?
I think it was mainly as a response because they used some of the Recovery Act funds with people were unable to access libraries for a period of time when they were shut down. So they were looking at how they could provide library services out to the public. So one area was hotspots. I mean, I'm probably not doing a great job of defending why libraries circulate hotspots. We're not one of the first libraries to do this. We're actually probably one of the last in the state. I mean, this is something that libraries do circulate, and many libraries had existing programs prior to us doing it. We did it. We signed up for a free program And we were looking at maintaining that program in the next fiscal year.
I guess jumping in here, my perspective on this is I understand the value, and I want to be cautious here to say, like, we're trying to look at this from a budget standpoint, but you know, what's driving this cost. I understand the value if you're saying, hey, this allows people who have trouble accessing internet to be able to access internet for, say, like, to be able to do remote learning, right? Or to hunt for jobs or whatever it is, right? When there's a lack of access for a town resident, right? I get that, especially during a pandemic. When it's, hey, I'm taking my kids to New Hampshire and I want to plug them into their devices and I don't want to stream off my data on my phone, that I have a harder pill swallowing. Like, and I get your point, Ryan. Like, again, you're saying, hey, we had access to this program, we did it, it's starting to see popularity, we're budgeting for it to continue. So I'm not trying to, like, personally just, like, jump on you for this. And I know you're just trying to sort of, like, present and represent. But in similar to a comment Tim made previously, my perspective on this is, you know, ideally, I'd love to see your guys' budget go up on the whole, but I'd rather see that 2,100 go into more programming or something that has a greater utility to a larger number of people. Like, how long can a hotspot be checked out for? If there's 5 of them, how long can I come in and grab it for?
Yeah,
So
100%.
Circulate, it's for 3 weeks at a time. You can't renew them. You have to bring them back at the end of the 3-week period.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it's $2,100 isn't a massive budget line, but when we're looking at everything, and then again, I think I dial into when your overall programming, program's the wrong term, right? But when your overall budget for things, right, everything outside of salary is like 146K, right, roughly, like this does become a big number. And again, like I'd rather have you guys do more programming or more things that you want to do that lots of people get access to. So perhaps a bigger discussion.
To Andrew's point, I just want to say, if there were increase, sometimes this is a budget, right? So it's kind of to a certain extent, these are what I think the costs will be next year, right? I've tried to double check those with vendors as much as possible. There are sometimes cost increases. We're not under contract with T-Mobile. That would be something we would have to explore, and we'd have to see what the actual budget number is. 5 was an estimate because that's what we have now. Honestly, Andrew saying, why wouldn't you have 1 or 2? Maybe that's something I might explore, especially if there's an increase in another line that's unanticipated in one of the other dues areas, right? So this isn't, this is sort of my best guess as to what it would cost and then what number we would circulate depending on what we have now. There's no sort of guarantee that we would go under contract and that we'd purchase some. I was planning on continuing the program. I mean, I take the feedback of this board seriously, and it sounds like you have a lot of questions as to why we do this. And that's not something that I've previously heard from anybody. So, you know, I take your feedback to point, and that's something I think I'll consider in the upcoming year.
All right, so keep us posted on this one. You know, we're listening tonight, right? There's no decisions being made tonight. We're not voting on anything tonight. We're listening. But you've heard quite a bit of skepticism on this one, I think, from advisory. Is there anyone and wants to weigh in on advisory as far as this one goes, besides who we've heard from? Marcy, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Ryan. Hi, nice to meet you. Do you think that you would rather keep the hotspots at that cost, or maybe if you had the option to transfer some of that funds to the programming line item? You know, I know that's a tough question, but you are the one that sees the use and kind of understands how popular these things are. I realize you're asking for more programs. So, you know, would it be a trade-off that you'd be willing to make or that you think would be useful?
I mean, I think based on the discussion we had when we were talking about programs, the library always needs money for programs. So if advisory's recommendation was that maybe take the hotspot money and look at putting that into a programming line item instead, you know, that it's not something that's entirely my decision. It would be up to the board to look at that and then approve that change. And I mean, the good news is we have a quorum of trustees here tonight that can speak to this if they want. We have a meeting next week and we're talking about the budget again, because I know we were meeting with all of you and we wanted to do that. But Marcy, I would be open to that suggestion and be looking at potentially increasing. I feel like now we're going from 1,000 to potentially 7.1. So that's a big jump. That's that I would say.
Yeah, so stop right there. I don't think that's what she's suggesting. If you want to protect that 1 going to 5, you might want to get rid of this to help protect that. If that's much more important to you to get the 5,000, you might want to think about taking that 2,100 out to help make your case to go from 1 to 5. So I don't think we're saying make the 5 7.
Correct.
Yeah,
I'm just
okay.
thinking that way, like, you see what's more important, I think, to people at the library as well. So it's just kind of a hypothetical if you had to decide what's more important to, that's all.
I mean,
Thank you.
I think that one of the MBLC reasons for doing the hotspots was to serve people that maybe couldn't get internet out of certain libraries. And I think the trustees should look at who is using them, and are they people who are not able to get internet, or are they people who are taking their kids to New Hampshire and want them to be able to use their games?
I agree, because
We'll check it out and see who's using it.
I was saying
I don't think that's an ethical thing that we can do to see who is using it in order to make that decision, just in terms of patron privacy. But I agree with everything that's said here. I understand that people's concerns of why we have hotspots. A lot of people seem to perceive that it's just not necessary in a town of our demographic. But I will support what Ryan said, in that hotspots for libraries it's not an unusual thing for libraries to circulate. Many towns, oftentimes bigger ones like Boston, Marlborough, they all circulate hotspots. And, a lot of the point of that is to have the ability to offer connectivity for people who may be financially disadvantaged. If we really feel like that's not the need, or maybe 5 isn't the number, maybe it's 1 or 2, I think these are all things that we can look at as we think about when this grant expires and we have to start paying for it ourselves.
Not certain why the directors and the trustees would not have the right to look at their own usage data.
Well, the other thing I just say, we can't draw a line at our border and only have people who might not be in need come to our library as well. So we serve a wider community, and I think we've learned a lot this year that not everybody has what they need in their house, even if they live in Southborough. Sorry, Ryan, go ahead and address Tim.
We don't qualify usage. I would say we don't ask people who check out books if they can afford the books. So I mean, that's my feedback on that.
No, and I was totally speculating when I said I'm assuming that the MBLC was behind this, and why T-Mobile as opposed to another carrier.
I will say the maximum number that we could request for the program was 30, and 5 was the minimum. And we got the minimum because I think, just like all of you, I think many people in Southborough have access to internet. So we did the minimum that we could do to participate in the program.
So I just want to add, I know that the schools in particular, and there are other areas of town as well, that allow people to apply for certain services based on need. And those applications are reviewed and they're kept private internally to that body. There's no reason why you can't do the same thing.
Libraries are different, Tim, and I'm assuming that people from other towns can come and take our hotspots as well, check them out.
That's correct.
This is not, I'm thinking that this is probably something that if all libraries do, it's supporting the general community's ability to get internet access. We can't ask people where they live. We may know, but we can have a lot of people coming from other towns where—
I'm confused. They have to use their library card to check it out, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
you will know everything you need to know.
People from other towns
Yep.
can check out things here with their own library cards, right? They don't have to get a Southborough one, do they, Ryan?
No, they just have to have a CW Mars card. So
Yep.
it can be from a surrounding community.
Right, but you'll know. Based upon the ID of the card. You'll have the demographic data you need. And
We could run a report of usage. Yes.
The point I'm trying to drill home is it's one thing to go to town meeting and ask for money for this to support a need, right? But then you have to turn around and justify that. You have to execute on that. You can't say I need this money because people may not have Wi-Fi service and then turn around and allow people who do have service just to put it in their car for 3 weeks at a time. Right.
And I think the MBLC's push with this was more of trying to get everyone in the country to have internet access.
I think, people don't have to have library passes either. They don't have to go to those. It's a nice thing to have. Library support culture, library support a number of different things. I see it more as part of that function.
Would you consider changing the parameters of the program? So if you have these hotspots, it's not necessarily a 3-week checkout or other things that you could put in place that protect the spirit of why you have those hotspots.
I've heard two different things tonight. I've heard this gives someone who's traveling, whatever, the ability to get on the internet if they're out of service, whatever, they don't want to use their data on their phone. I heard that, but then I've heard this may allow someone who can't afford internet to get on the internet. But if you're talking about that person, there's no guarantee they can get one of these hotspots religiously. So maybe they can't get it when they need it. So I just don't think it solves that problem. And I am not that concerned about solving the first problem. There's many ways to solve the first problem. I just don't see why this is a library core function. But I do think most departments are going to be asked to whack their budget a little bit at some point. That's why select board are asking about your the increase on the professional the professional ones. So go back to the overall budget.
Oh, the professional development.
Yeah, so they're asking about that one, but look how little that, that's only going up $500. So I know this sounds like we're nitpicking, and we actually are, but every little bit helps. And of course, it's year after year after year after year too, as far as these kind of things go. So anyway, I think we've talked about it enough. We've flushed out, what's going on here. So let's think about it some more. But
Kathy,
I think
could I say to you that when the trustees meet next, we'll hash over the T-Mobile hotspots and see if we can come back to you with some more reasonable reasons either to do it or to drop it from the budget.
that would be great, Marguerite. So thank you.
I'd be happy to put together a needs assessment and see what the need might be.
Yeah, and Ryan, I think also just looking at the pricing, right? Because I think what the program ends at the end of September, I think 2022. So it's however months after that, what would the cost be for this many? Almost talk to Jay. Or I don't know who else does the T-Mobile or whatever, our town contract, right? If we did purchase our own hotspots, what would the actual cost be? And then just go from there.
Is T-Mobile the carrier for the town?
I think we use Verizon.
The cell phones, yeah.
Verizon.
It's Verizon?
I think so.
T-Mobile's accounted for the state program.
So we're meeting with IT next week. We'll run this by them too. We're meeting with both the MPC and IT at the same time. So we'll throw this out to them and see what they say. Maybe they've got a good alternative that doesn't cost anything.
Right, because it is a chunk of change. You're right. It's a chunk. So we'll look at that and see if reasonably it would be better to put that somewhere else.
All right, let's go back to the spreadsheet again.
Yeah, Kathy, while I'm printing, I'm just gonna leave with one final thought. I know we beat this one, but I'm curious how many people take advantage of the craft piece that's $250 per visit, right? Because if you look at the cost of T-Mobile and a 3-week checkout over the course of a year, those 5 hotspots allow 86, not even necessarily individuals, 86 checkouts essentially. I think my math is right. So that's a pretty high cost, I feel like, per the number of people that actually get to utilize it compared to some of the other awesome programming you guys do. So I'll stop there, but
yeah. Well, and
Eric, people can return them early though. They don't have to take them for a full 3 weeks. So they could take them for a night and then return it the next day.
Perhaps I'm pessimistic, but I know I probably owe a lot of library dues to the last town I lived
Yeah.
in.
Well,
So, forgive me.
and that begs a question. Some towns, I looked it up, like some towns are only a week. I mean, maybe we go to a week or 2 weeks instead of 3. We can play that, but.
All right, let's move on because this one's going to come up with the select board. Let's talk about the increase in professional development. So Ryan, you want to go back to that one?
Sure. So the current professional development budget basically accommodates all of the professional organizations and development that I do. individually, it does not accommodate additional library staff. One of the things that I can point out is I applied for an ALA grant because I'm an ALA member, and last year we got a $3,000 grant as a result of that in order to do program, like some outdoor conversation programs. So really the cost kind of paid for itself, because as a member of ALA, I was able to apply for an ALA grant that was 6 times the amount that we put into the development line. What I'd like is to have more of our, in particular, full-time staff be able to participate in professional organizations, and then hopefully to take advantage of any sort of grant programs that are available. That way, not all of the grant writing is on me. It also helps our staff engage more as library professionals and to develop as staff members for the town.
And do you have a list of what's in the 1075?
I could get that for you. I could. A lot of it is just individual memberships for the Massachusetts Library Association. And then there's also that CMLA group, which helps with Zoom hosting for programs, but they also do professional development programs. That was another one. It's about it. The MLA fees vary based on income level, and then CMLA is $25 for a year.
All right, so why don't you send me the details of that? Send me the details of the usage of all the stuff we're subscribing to, right? And then the board will continue to talk about the hotspots.
Can we
The
get
one
on the
thing,
dues too, though? Not just the subscriptions. Between the programs, the subscriptions, and the dues, not suggesting that Ryan, you and the board have not poured a lot of energy and effort into this, but just wondering if the proportion of funding based on kind of need, impact, participation from the town is right-sized for those 3 buckets. And is it worth taking another look at that just based on utilization rates and value to the town?
well, I mean, we have about 6,700 active card users in Southborough. So that's a little more than 2/3, I think, of the town, right?
So I'm not challenging. I'm
Yeah.
actually wondering if it's worth kind of looking at the budget in each of those 3 buckets: subscriptions, dues, and programming, and if there should be shifts in proportion of the budget for each of those things. That's all. I'm not trying to take away. And if anything, I would put more into some of them probably. But that's all I was wondering, if we can get utilization or kind of the need being addressed by some of those other dues items other than just the hotspots.
But to be clear, the reason the 1's gone to 5 and the 18.9's gone to 21, so let's focus on those 2 for a moment, is because they're not adding anything new. They're just trying to fund it differently. They're trying to put more into the town budget than what's been in the past, because they're worried about losing Friends money and worried about not being able to get grants to repeat themselves. So they're not doing anything new. They're just trying to keep doing what they were doing. So, you start talking about level service budget. This is a level service budget. There's nothing new in here other than a little bit more of professional development. So say that again.
Hotspots.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, but to Kathy's point, right, the service is still the same. It's just
Yeah.
before you were paying with grants. I think we need to do a better job, not only, for the library, but even for all of our committees, of when we get a grant, it becomes an expectation that we continue whatever that work was, whether that be interface, whether that be the hotspots. There's a lot of different things that all of a sudden we get a grant for 1 year, and then it seems like we're kind of get on the hook for it for the rest of the life. So I think, we almost need as we get a grant, we need to have a discussion. Is this really a one-time thing, a one-off event, or a one-time purchase or capital purchase? Or are we now adding this to future needs?
Could I speak to that just briefly? Because I know what you mean about it's sort of like the first 90 days are free and then you're stuck with the cost for the rest of your life. And sometimes they are teasers and they try things out and you say, yes, it will work. No, it won't work. But a lot of times there are things that the library really and truly needs, like programming, and we have really had to we've really had to spend an awful lot of time doing grant writing to get just anything desperately to, for instance, enhance our programming. So yes, sometimes we'll drop something because it is kind of something that's trying to sucker you into it, but other times it's just sheer desperation. At really, Andrew, it's been sort of like, how are we going to get money to pay for this? Well, let's try a grant.
This is sort of my point with, if we take a look at the things that are really important that we desperately want and we're having a hard time getting, and we compare to some of the things at the very bottom of the barrel that, yes, we think are important, but pale in comparison to some of the things that are at the top of the list. It's just reshuffling a little bit of what's already in the budget to prioritize the things that we think are most important. And that's all. I'm not saying that anything on the bottom of the list of the subscription or dues is less important or it is not important, but it is less important. And so sometimes we just have to kind of force ourselves to make choices not to do something so we can do the things that are most important. That's all.
Yes, and we dropped a language learning program that was lovely, but not enough people used it. You could learn a foreign language for nothing via the library. It was fabulous, but it cost too much money and not enough people took advantage. So we do reassess pretty frequently.
Within the dues and memberships, Adam, sorry, Tim, just let me finish this really quick.
No problem.
Those are subscription costs those are in order to maintain certain things that the library does. And the biggest one, which is the big chunk of that, is our annual assessment from C to B Mars. That's in order to function as a Massachusetts library. So that is not something we sort of have as an optional cost. I'll just say we can't do interlibrary loan service without that cost. So
yeah, that makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to append something to what Marguerite said. And Amy, I'm really surprised you haven't spoken up with this one. So there are many, or several at least, 501c3s that support town departments. What used to be called the Southborough Ed Foundation, supported the schools. They intentionally would fund the first year of a new program that they considered cutting edge, new, whatever, with the hope that if it was something that the school system liked, they would then put it into their budget the second year. The SCF wasn't going to fund it the second year. We do it the first year. And then the second year, we were hoping it was something that was a good program, that they like it and they'll adopt it. And there's 150 examples of that. The Southborough Community Fund that Amy's now part of too, same thing. So remember the discussion last week with Interface and Youth and Family Services. So SCF funded the first year of that.
Yes.
SCF did not want to fund the second year, but they agreed to fund a piece of it. I'm relatively confident they're not going to fund any of the third year unless there's a change of heart. So again, they wanted to fund the first year to see if we liked it. We did. And then they want the budget to pick it up. So we do have to be careful and ask every time we meet, what grants are you guys utilizing off budget? So we really understand when this is going to happen, because a lot of departments have grants that they're using and some of them recur, some of them don't.
Kathy, I had a question about similar to this, which is, Ryan, I know you guys mentioned that the book sale fundraising has gone downhill a bit and it's not raising as much money. I feel like the library in a community really tugs at the heartstrings of a lot of people. So I'm kind of wondering what other fundraising opportunities might exist. And are you guys looking at any of that for some of these programs that you want to continue? Things like, member fundraisers, arts community nights, year-end campaigns, things like that. Just ideas. But I think that certainly there's probably a lot of people in the community that would support some of these things if there were fundraiser activities going on. I don't know what's been tried in the past. I'm relatively new to Southborough, but just throwing that out.
And I also think, Ryan, before you say, all of that is just the same as grants. We're depending on things that may not come in or, change drastically over time. And I think, I get a lot of newsletters from other libraries to see what they're doing. And Ryan and his staff work tirelessly to do programming and things like that, but we are behind other libraries because we haven't been adequately funded. Ryan spends way more time than he ever should be probably doing these grants to enable us to continue to do them. And as Kathy said, you know, the organizations that I've been with, the idea is to give a grant and it should fly. It should be funded by the school district or by the budget of the town. And that hasn't happened. And so we just continue to be having to go to the Friends. And if they decide they don't want to fund it, it doesn't happen unless Ryan then has to go find money somewhere else. So although, in my opinion, all those things should be for extras. You know, it may sound silly, but like when they had the book clubs in person with the kids, they would, you know, having them have, you know, healthy snacks. You'd be surprised how many kids would show up for a book club because they got, you know, cracker or carrots and raisins or something. But to me, some of those fundraising things should be for the extras, just like kind of the Southborough Ed and then now the Southborough Community Fund do. It's the extras, not what should be considered part of a functioning library. Sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to kind of answer your question, Marcy, the Friends, our Friends group is a relatively small organization. They maybe have like, I think 5 or 6 really active members who go to all the meetings. They do the amount of fundraising I think that group has the capacity for. I think in the future, it would be great if that group were to expand and were to do more fundraising, but they really do the best, I think, with the resources that they have. And they've tried to recruit membership before, and they do have people who come to maybe 1 or 2 meetings, and then they fall off pretty quickly. So I think part of that maybe is if there's a more active and maybe larger base of Friends support, we may see additional fundraising in the future. And that is something, you know, I try to actively assist our Friends group, even though I bailed out of their meeting early tonight. But I try to be a supportive presence in there and help them with what they need, with the idea that, you know, there's a return on that investment in the future.
Easier
Thank
said
you.
than done. Easier said than done, as Amy knows. So yeah,
I
there's a-
realized.
all the Friends group are starving for people, starving for money. It's just, I don't know. Southborough is a little bit unusual sometimes.
Ryan, does the library have its own donation account? When we talked to Youth and Family Services the other day, we found out that there's the Friends group, and then people can also make donations directly to the library, which is account, I think that's under like kind of, I mean, to the Friends, Youth and Family Services, that's under Sarah's kind of purview.
I think
Yeah,
it
so
goes into the general fund, right?
No, there's a donations account, but when somebody writes a check, this happened at Christmas, when somebody writes a check and they make it out to the Southborough Library, the donation, because of legal, sort of the legality, it needs to get approved by the Board of Selectmen. So that's been moved to a consent agenda. So oftentimes we have to wait and then get it approved by the selectmen, and then it can go in the account. And sometimes the amounts of money are silly to have to
Yeah,
wait.
sometimes it's like $25.
Yeah, $25, $100. I think
But
it was $100 check. So
Okay, but does the
but we-
library board get to spend the money the way they choose?
Sure, if they want.
Okay, same thing. So that's good. You know, I've always been jealous of some other towns. There's some other towns around us, and including the ones that start with W, that have had big donations made to their libraries over the years. I mean, multi-million dollars. So I'm always hoping that we'll get lucky like that one of these days here, but we haven't so far. All right, so you've got donation accounts, but it doesn't have much money in it, I would think. And do you spend it as soon as you get it, as soon as it's approved?
No, we don't.
Okay, so how much is in it today? Do you know?
I want to say it's maybe around $9,000 or $10,000. I'd have to double check with Brian.
All right, okay. All right, so Tom, we haven't heard from you. Do you have any questions, any further questions? I know this was your department.
One question. Yeah, I'm not going to go into we've obviously covered the hotspot in depth, but I just had one question on the number on that, Ryan. Maybe I misinterpreted something. So when we're looking at row 19 on the dues, how it's pretty much stabilized the last 3 years, we've had a few dollars, But in that tab, if you go back to that tab that you just had, the dues tab itself, is that 2,100 new this year? Because you said it was grant money before. And if so, how, what's the, like, what, I guess, went away out of the 2,100 roughly?
Okay, so.
And maybe I
'cause-
missed that.
No, you didn't. So
Okay.
the money that, because those lines in those columns are the actual money that we spent within that year. What
Uh-huh.
happened was there was a number of museums passes that the Friends didn't support in 20 FY21 because the museums they didn't want to support any museums. They spent under $1,000. I think they had renewed 2 things right before COVID hit. So many of those like the institutions reopened and then they
Right.
asked us to re-up their membership. So the money that is going towards the hotspot was spent on museums that the Friends are going to pick up next year. They've already renewed a number of them. So they're back to supporting the museums. They didn't for about a year, which makes sense. A lot of them were closed, so it didn't make sense to renew the museums during that time.
Okay, that makes
Right.
sense.
But I get, maybe I missed it. Wouldn't it be, if you're saying they're doing it now and they didn't before, wouldn't the like roughly 28.5 for this year be even higher since we're adding another $2,100 item?
No, no, because it was about $2,100 we spent, I would say, on the passes previously that we don't have to spend this year.
Oh, got it.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. And just one other, you mentioned before there's 6,700 roughly library card holders.
Yep.
Are those all within Southborough or is that not?
Yep. We have about, I think it's like about 150 card holders that don't live in our town. So they're people who either, they came from Marlborough and they got specifically a Southborough library card because they might just like our library better. We allow that to happen.
Okay.
So they just have the prefix. That's how they separate them out on the statistics.
Got it.
But this kind of a good segue for, I guess, my last point, which is the board and I, would greatly value advisory's advice. But because there's many new members of advisory, it's worth noting that because the library trustees are independently elected, that they can also, once they vote on the budget, and they can vote on it multiple times leading up to town meeting, but advisory can vote to support, I guess, what the trustees decide. But that just, I want to make you aware of the organizational relationship, is that if the trustees want to pass a budget and then make the appeal directly to the town, they have the option to do that. Just
So let
that
me correct you, Ryan. That's actually not true. That's an old wives' tale, which we got confirmed a few weeks ago. We thought that too. That's what we got in discussion last year with the Board of Health, who's also independently elected. So I finally went back and said, I've never read this. Why do we think that the independent boards are able to publish their own budget as far as the budget in the warrant? And it's not true. Board of Selectmen totally control what gets printed in that warrant. It's not advisory either. I thought it was advisory. It's not advisory either. We recommend a budget to the town, and we can certainly make it clear what our recommendation is, but the actual budget that's in the printed warrant is the one the Board of Selectmen wants in there. So it's not what the independent boards vote. You can get up and vote to amend it. It can go up and down too. You may have always heard too, oh, you can't increase in budget. Oh, yes, you can. So you can certainly stand up and say, we disagree with what the Board of Selectmen have asked you to approve, our advisors asked you to approve, and we want you to increase it, which is perfectly fine. But it's the Board of Selectmen that are going to control what actually gets printed in the warrant and voted on to begin with. So that's, the motion will be that budget. And then, you can stand up and say, disagree, hold that budget. We want to increase, we want to put, $10,000 to hotspots. But that is that. And we just had this confirmed a few weeks ago with the new town council. So it's fresh on our minds.
No,
thank you
we've
for the
never done
clarification.
anything like that with this current advisory board, nor would we ever. But there have been moments in previous town meetings long ago when the library board did stand up and say, we would like more money than has been allotted to us. But
But I've
Yeah.
heard for years, it can't go up, it can only go down, but yes, it can go up too, within reason. You're not going to get up and say, we want to build a $50 million library.
I wouldn't commit that we'd never go to the town. and contest this. I think that's an option that we have available to us.
Well, you know, we try real hard, as Janet knows from being on advisory, really hard to come to an agreement that everyone can live with. Everybody may not be perfectly happy, but we try to come up with something that's reasonable, that provides a reasonable year-over-year increase in taxes. So, you know, we try to take all that into account. So you know, we've usually gotten theirs, and we probably will again this year too. So I don't think there's anything to get excited about tonight. But that, I just wanted to clarify, Ryan, I knew where you were going with that. And I mean, we have heard this too. Last year, the Board of Health, we kept hearing that. So that's why we were so concerned about what was going to happen. They were going to propose this huge budget increase. It was going to be written, and then we were going to have to amend it. But we got that worked out ahead of time, so that what got printed was what we wanted. So
well, I'm happy to stand corrected, Kathy. I think it was good to have that discussion with both groups. But I was going to say, all that said, it's very important to me that we have a budget and that the library puts forth a budget that makes sense to advisory too. So, I mean, there was a lot of feedback about hotspots tonight that I think we're going to talk about in next week's trustee meeting. So I will definitely follow up on that.
And Tim, I would suggest, because the current hotspots are paid for with ARPA funds from the Mass Bureau of MBLC. Maybe it's worth bringing to the ARPA committee as something that's ARPA related.
What is ARPA? Sorry.
That's a pretty small amount of money to bring to that committee, I would think. They've got, I think, bigger things to have to.
It's the American Rescue Plan Act. It's a new government thing.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so it was under advanced digital inclusion as the section of the ARPA bill that they put this under.
That sounds good.
So Marguerite, Tim's on a committee that's been formed ad hoc to determine how Southborough is going to spend its $3 million allocation. So that's what Andrew Pfaff is referring to. We've got $3 million that we've got to decide how to spend.
Yeah, so if we can try
I'm glad Andrew, I'm glad you looked it up, because just now you know that the hotspots weren't my idea. Okay.
No, I get it. And I looked it up, and I understand each town, and I saw the 5 to 30 and the rules. That's where I saw the date of September 30th. So I think it's just, if you could do the due diligence, talking with Jay or to John Parent on, what would it cost us for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hotspots, right? If we started in October 1st, right? What would the fiscal year cost to do that service? Most likely we would go with Verizon, right? Because that's our current contractor, or we could see what the T-Mobile pricing would be. But I think just kind of knowing what that would be ahead of time. And I did find a couple other companies that do it for libraries, and some of them are like $120 a year. So maybe it's even cheaper.
Yeah, there's a Boost mobile plan, which apparently is super cheap too, which a lot of the libraries have talked about. But what we suspect is when the program ends with T-Mobile, that they're going to then offer a discount for libraries to continue. So that would be, I guess, like another consideration. But I honestly, I don't know if we do 5 if we continued it. I mean, you guys are making me think we should evaluate whether or not it should be continued. So that'll be a discussion that the board and I have.
That's
and
all
with
we ask. That's all we ask. Okay. We ought to ask Verizon to donate them. Okay.
Quick question, Ryan. Have you looked into any of the self-service kiosks for checkout that some other libraries are implementing?
We have one.
We do?
Yeah, we have a self-checkout currently. We've had one since 2015.
How effective is it? How often does it break?
It has never broken.
Great.
It is very well utilized by the public. We have it right adjacent to our holds pickup area. So what we offer users if they want a completely self-service experience. So they can come in, they can grab their holds off the shelf adjacent to the circulation desk. And as long as they have their library card, they can then immediately check out the item or items.
In answer to your question, I think we paid for that out of state aid.
That's correct. We did.
That was not in our budget, and we decided it was a state aid expense that we thought was reasonable, and it's been successful. Some people think it's more, what's the word I want? Antiseptic.
I was
a lot of people the first 2 years asked if we were reducing staff or replacing people with machines. I got that question a lot. I think after it had been implemented for several years, like, people don't question why it's there now. They see the value in the machine and in using it. And it is I have to say, I've been pleasantly surprised with how the community has adapted. A lot of people like using the machine, and we got a more expensive one from a proven library vendor that I had used before, and we got a higher cost one because we didn't want it to break down. And I'm happy to say that it has not broken over time.
Are you going to expand the
Knock
program?
wood, Ryan.
I know, right? It needs a hardwired connection, Tim. So that's been one of the challenges, is where we would physically locate additional machines. And I'm still working with John Parent and Jay on hardwiring the new copy machine. So I saw Bobby, the town's part-time electrician, on Monday, and he's probably going to have to come back a couple times just to test wires, because our building, you guys probably know this if you've followed all the capital discussions, our building is very fantastic with how things are organized and how electrical and wiring works in our building. It's been patchwork for 100 years. So once we hardwire the copy machine, we might look at where else we could put a self-checkout machine, but I'd be open to getting another one if funds were available.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, anything else before we ask Ryan to update us on capital?
I have a quick question. Actually, sorry, maybe two questions and a comment. So one question, this is probably a really naive one, given you're a library, but the books and materials line item there going up, it had been trending down for a number of years. What exactly is that covering?
Books and materials. So it's multimedia items, it's DVDs, it's audiobooks. We also, during COVID, we also have an electronic subscription service. We have two of them. We have one called Canopy and one called Hoopla. So those, because they, the way that they're sort of organized, we get a monthly bill based on usage. Those come out of it too. So it's not entirely print. It's the Hoopla and Canopy bills in addition to all of the print. So I would say in about 2 weeks, we spend about 5,000 on materials on average.
Are those increasing because there's new types of subscriptions or costs going up to the subscriptions? It just had been trending down for a number of years and going back up now.
It's based on what we think we're going to spend money on books in the next year. It has to be a certain amount because MBLC has a sort of materials requirement. They call it a materials expenditure requirement. So if your community is a certain size, you have to spend a certain amount. And that is one of the things that we look at year to year, is we need to maintain that the amount we're actually spending on materials meets the state requirement. So that's a balance that I have to measure. Year to year, it's varied depending on the amount of budget we've been able to get approved from the town. So I think the fluctuations that you're seeing over time, Adam, they actually are based on what budget was approved either by the existing board or the town.
Ryan, isn't our percentage 19%, or was that before we were 10,000?
It's 16% now. So out of the overall budget, it's 16%. Yeah. So it's higher than that. And that's mainly because we spend money on materials. There have been times that we've run out of money. So I want to make sure that, you know, in a proper budget cycle, we're able to spend enough. I don't know if that answers your question, but I tried.
Maybe. So I guess in 2022, 80,000 or 80.6, are we running up against that? You know, are you tracking high against that right now?
Well, also, I should say, so this happened a couple of years ago, and we talked to advisory about this the year it happened. So if you notice in the FY20 line in the main spreadsheet, see how the print and subscriptions line is 0, but the libraries in FY19 was at 102. That was because subscription, and either if it was a database and the annual periodical bill all came out of materials. What I sat down and I talked with Heidi Krieger when she was here, and I've talked with Carla about this after, is that we decided what we wanted to do was be transparent about where the money was going to advisory, to the town. And so the trustees got a better conception of subscription costs. And we separated that out so that you guys see now how much databases cost and how much print subscriptions cost. And that's why I've done the additional line, you know, sort of the subscriptions cost tab, which gives a breakdown of what the projected costs in those lines are. Because it used to be one gigantic bucket. And
Got
to
it.
me, that didn't make sense because month-to-month book bills are very different than these gigantic large costs for the annual subscriptions we pay for the electronic resources.
Okay, so those rows 15 and 16 should be looked at in conjunction with one another.
Correct. That in my state, I have to do a big statistic state report every August. And though for the purposes of the state report, those count as materials costs all together. But you can see in the line item what materials are being paid for in sort of what bucket of money. And I think it makes more sense for you guys to see those costs separated out.
Okay, that makes sense.
Anything else, Adam?
And then my other question was around, which I think you might have talked about a little bit at the top of this conversation, but just to sort of confirm maybe. So looking at the part-time salaries, they've gone up quite a bit from 21 to 22 and now down a little bit, which I understand that story, why they're down a little bit in 2023. Is there a meaningful impact to our ability to execute programs out of the library or other things out of the library, or meaningful operational efficiencies that we gained from that increased $30,000 in part-time salary? And I don't know if you could just talk a little bit about that. And then have you also considered volunteer, maybe you already do have volunteers in the library that might free up some of the salary line item budget that could go towards other things like programming or subscriptions?
Yeah, so there was a substantial increase also in the amount of grants we received, but also in the amount of programming we were doing. We kind of ramped that up post-flood. We wanted to do a lot for the community because we had the children's room shut down for so much time. So we also, this has been kind of an ongoing conversation we've had with the town administration year to year. We were filling teen programming during that period with part-time staff members as kind of an experiment to see if we could do that in a way that if we didn't have a full-time person contributing to it, could that supplement what we did? And what I can say as an experiment, it did not work because we didn't have the staff member working day to day. They didn't have the same interactions with the people. We were having like staff members work different shifts 3 days out of the week. I mean, we tried to make it as consistent as possible, but that didn't work. And that's part of the transition into having Kim be the assistant director and then hiring Mariana, who was a part-time staff member. She was one of the people trying to do that. She just wasn't at the library for enough time. So having her, there's been a big shift in having her transition to a full-time staff member and then be able to take on sort of those programming responsibilities. And she's still able to utilize part-time staffing, but in a way where it's sort of organized under her. And then we have a point person who's taking responsibility for it. So does that help? That was kind of what we did. So it was, I needed an assistant director. I needed somebody who could help me again, because we talked a lot about the time in my grants, but I actively covered the desk. The town administration has been adamant that they do not want to hire a seventh full-time person. So I've been trying to operate the library with sort of the increasing demands from the public on programming and services and kind of temper that with part-time staff. So that is sort of what you're seeing as far as the transition budgetarily. And then going back down is with somebody doing team programming on the full-time staff, we still need part-time staff to pick up the slack because we lost a paraprofessional, but not in the same amount that we needed when they were trying to do teen programming.
And just to be clear, Adam, fiscal year 21, you're looking at an actual column. Their budget was actually $556,000 for that year. I'm sure it's COVID impacted as far as why they didn't spend it all. So the increase from 21, 22 was not 526 to 573. It was only 3%. So they just didn't spend all their budget for fiscal year 21.
Mhm. Yeah, and I just wanted to, I got, it was a good answer. Just trying to ensure that the increase in labor is actually driving additional programming and execution of the programming, and it sounds like it is, so.
To be honest, when we flooded in the basement, it's worth noting that the library only closed a total of 9 days during the flood. We operated the upstairs almost the entire time. So we had to close for a couple days when we first flooded. And then the only time we had to shut down for a week was when they recarpeted downstairs, because the smell from the adhesive was so severe that it was making the staff feel ill. So that was the only other time that we didn't operate. So I will say our circulation numbers during the flood were surprisingly good, because people still came and checked out books. And if for anybody who remembers, we created almost like a triage children's area. And then we're upstairs where we do kind of the main floor programs, and we were able to do story times upstairs too. So we made almost like a temporary children's room, and then people still came out and checked out books, even though most of the collection was in storage units. We bought new books, people checked out the new books. So also during COVID, I have to say our circulation numbers were surprisingly good, because we transitioned to curbside service as soon as we could. And then that was very well utilized by the public, because for a long time there was nothing to do other than sit at home and read a book. So when I tell you that members of the public, and we have 6,700 active card holders in Southborough, the library is very well utilized. And for a tiny library, we do big business.
Yeah, no, I know it. My kids love it. They use all of the services, so it's great.
Anything else from anybody before Ryan updates us on the capital improvements that have been made recently?
One more thing, no, just kidding, we can talk about it.
Excuse me?
I said one more thing, just kidding, we could talk about capital.
Okay. All right, so Ryan,
Andrew's
let's
gonna
talk
get a
about
hat
what.
that says I heart hotspots. He's gonna get one made, I think, and we're, yeah.
All right, so tell us about the roof, and tell us about the carpet, and tell us about the paint.
So the CPA facade restoration project, I should also knock on my desk, is complete at this point. We thought we were going to be complete. I think it was like Janet, help me out here. I want to say May of this past year, April or May. And then in September, we had a leak in the roof, and it was a coping stone problem that wasn't part of the original scope of work. So we had to have the contractors come back out in September, have the roofers come look at just a slight repair work on the coping stones. That work was completed by the end of September. It's rained a bunch of times. We haven't had any water coming in. It was in a very tiny area next to the circulation desk. And I'm happy to say it water leaked on our old carpet, which we're going to be replacing in the next couple of weeks. So painting, to transition into that, I don't know how many people are familiar with the CPA project. Many years ago, I worked with the Community Preservation Committee on a historical restoration project on the historic part of the library. I think Mr. Martell was on CPC then, right? So he was one of the, I don't know if I can call you an advocate. I feel like you were a supporter of the project.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So our steps in the front were starting to sink into the ground, and a number of the stonework had eroded over time, we found on the roof. We also needed to completely replace the roof. So once we had people go up on the roof, we have no roof access at the library. We found out that it was a membrane roof that was in desperate need of replacement because it hadn't been done since the '89 renovation. So because not all of the building is historic, some of it was added in 1989. It was a joint project because the town's capital fund had to also support the non-historic section of the roof. So it was a multi-year project. Construction happened largely while we were shut down because of COVID. So that kind of worked out a little bit. And I'm happy to say, I mean, many of you have probably seen the library from the intersection or walked by it outside. I'm very happy with the end result. I think the trustees are too. Yeah.
And under budget.
And wildly under budget. Yeah. So we bid it out, and then the bids came back right before construction costs exploded. So a lot of that was due to John Parent and our OPM. So a big fan of John, I'll say. I like to let you guys know that too, because I know he has to come before you sometimes. Then John and I are coordinating right now an interior renovation project, which was to repaint and recarpet the upstairs, all of the upstairs space. So we got kind of a facelift after the 2009 flood with downstairs because insurance paid for remediation, but we have not recarpeted or repainted the main floor of the library since the 1989 renovation. So those carpets are that old. They're almost as old as me, which is, I may look youthful, but I'm not. So I'm happy to say those are getting replaced. We're doing a modern carpet square. We have one big carpet upstairs, which has created a number of problems, including moisture getting trapped on it. And we get what I call, the parachute carpet, where it kind of bunches up and we've got air pockets throughout and people trip on it. So it's a hazard. John is having the facilities team paint. So the Judy Williams reading room has been completed. We're now actively doing the circulation area. We haven't had to shut down for the painting. I'm gonna give the trustees more of an update next week, but I think the week of the 24th, we're looking at a projected closing to do carpets in the circulation area and the reading room. At the end of February, we're going to do the back half of upstairs. So we're going to do painting and carpeting at the same time. John thinks it's going to take 1 to 2 weeks, depending on once we iron out the logistics.
And this board fought very hard to make sure that project got approved. So it's coming to fruition. So that's great.
I would say we're going to be posting pictures on social media. We did the first one as they were prepping to do it. The half of the circulation area has already been completed, and it already has made a very big difference in the visual look of the library. So I would just say we're getting compliments already, and it's like actively being painted. So that just gives you an idea of how much the public and how much the staff are appreciative of this effort. It's just the library, that component of the library has not been paid attention to for over 30 years. So I greatly appreciate advisory's support and with working with the library trustees to make that happen last year.
Well, it was the trustees that really convinced us. I mean, they showed us how gross it was and old and whatever. So they sold it. Okay, so there's nothing on capital for fiscal year 23 for the library so far. Everybody agree with that? Mm-hmm. Yep. Board of Trustees, Library Board of Trustees, there's going to be a public meeting next Thursday, the 20th at 7:30, where the person who's been hired as the town space planner is going to present what he believes would be the appropriate use of Woodward if Woodward were to be closed. The subcommittee that I'm on that is about to write a report to the school committee as far as the ability to close the school and make a recommendation as to probably which school we're going to close. That's happening pretty soon too. So this is all coming to fruition pretty fast. So you guys may want to post a meeting for next Thursday at 7:32 because obviously I'm sure that you're going to be interested in what he says as far as the use of the Woodward space, as far as more library space.
I let the board know about it this afternoon already. So I think some people are already interested. So I think you might see a joint meeting posted. And I promise I'll make sure we do it at the right time next week if we go that route. So.
Okay. All right. So anything else from the library board? Janet? Marguerite? Amy?
No, but thank
Yeah.
you for all of your support on this and over the years, and also for the advice on the hotspots. We will check those out. And I know we're all trying to get to the same place on this, which is a better library for Southborough, and there it is. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
One quick question I always ask Brian every time he's here. MBLC grants, is they any more news on when they're gonna maybe open that thing up?
Oh, for the construction? It's my answer every time, Andrew. It's TBD. You know, no.
TBD, okay.
So,
Yeah.
so
I'll ask you again in 1 year.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. I like the
Jason
annual question.
Malowski, yeah, Jason has also looked into this. He says anything below 10 years is completely unrealistic. He says
But-
11 years, if possible, maybe.
They
This
are
is not
no
for the
guarantee.
impatient, right? Yeah.
part of the reason MBLC did the hotspot program, though, is because there is like things like ARPA funding, some of the federal money that becomes available can go into certain programs. So I will say with the caveat, Andrew, that if federal money somehow can get filtered into the program, we might be looking at closer to 10 years if that happens, but that's no guarantee. So what MBLC is saying is maybe 10 years shrug, and that's my answer.
That's actually good news because the if we were to decide to close Woodward and rehab Neary, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to that's pretty far down the road too, as far as the timing goes. So we will see. Stay tuned. Okay, thank you guys. We will see you soon.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
See everybody. All right. Is there anyone? So any public comment? No one's there, right? Okay, so no public comment. Okay, we've already talked about the schedule, so that's out of the way. So I think we're done unless anyone else has anything for tonight. I thought we would have a short meeting. Next week will be a long meeting. I can just tell you right now with what we're going to talk about. So be prepared for that one. So I thought this would be shorter than it was, but it was interesting as always. That's a really good group of, I mean, Ryan's great and the board of trustees is great there. So good group to deal with. Okay, anything else anybody wants to bring up before we adjourn?
Kathy, when we get these budgets from groups like this or the Youth and Family Services, where there's another separate entity funding some of what they do, why don't we ask for some of that information more explicitly within the spreadsheets that they provide, just so we know kind of what the total amounts are?
That's a very good question, and it's a very good idea. Because of what, it just, you got to understand what's going on outside the budget, right? And so it's a good question. We should be doing it. And it's not too late. We should definitely do it for Council on Aging, just so you know, Marcy, definitely relies on outside grants that tend to be recurring. So we definitely should do it with them. So let's do that for Council on Aging for sure. When we get to schools, you're going to hear a lot. I'm doing the schools, and we're going to get into this a whole lot as far as that goes, because they've got lots of things going on outside, and they've got some revolving funds too we need to get into. So we can do it with those two, and we go back and ask them to do this, so we really understand truly what they're spending in total, and not just what the town's funding, because it really does. It's all connected, right? I mean, we can't tell the Friends what to do. They're independent. They can do what they want to do, but it does help to understand what they're funding, so we understand what we're not funding in case we have to fund it.
Right. You know where your exposure is.
Yeah. Because the library is so popular in town. I'm sure it's the most popular department across the board, right? Young parents love the schools. Older people don't like the schools as much because they think they cost so much. But everybody likes the library for the most part. So yeah, those programs they're doing are very popular, and I'm sure people will want them to be retained, even if they have to go in the town budget. So it definitely is something we should do. So that's a great request, Adam. Okay, anything else before we adjourn?
Yeah, Kathy, one housekeeping thing. At the beginning, I don't think we ever voted on those meeting notes from last week. We got sidetracked as we were doing.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. All right, so let's approve the minutes. We only had a couple changes. So motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Who seconded?
Adam.
Adam seconded, Claire. Sorry, it's Tom. Thank you very much. Okay, roll call vote. Eric,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
AP,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
Tom,
I'll abstain. I wasn't there last week. So.
and Cook is aye. So 6-0-1, Claire, on the minutes. Okay, now motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Who seconded? Tim?
Tim.
Tim, okay. All right, roll call vote. Eric,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
AP,
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Cook is aye, so 7-0 to adjourn. So see everybody except for Tom next Wednesday at 7:30. All right, bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.